apiece. Alan, good to be with you, my man. And I just got to tell you, welcome back to the airwaves. And I got to congratulate you and your wife on the birth of a beautiful daughter. So congratulations, my man, and looking forward to the next 3.
Thank you, JD. I know it's good to be back. You know, the sleep doesn't matter right now. Sleep doesn't matter right now. I'm excited to be here, be with you. Thank you for the well wishes. We're excited. Beautiful baby girl, and ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, so it's going to be a lot of fun. We'll open up the phone lines, 888-957-9570, 888-957-9570, as we're with you until 1 o'clock, as we are each and every Saturday morning right here on 95.7 The Game. And let's just get into it right off the top, Alan. The Warriors lose Game 6 when it appeared as if they had this series in control, but Golden State, with a lot of the things that were problematic for them in the other 2 games that they lost, Game 1 and Game 2, they got hit on the boards. They couldn't defend at the level that they needed to in transition. A lot of bad shots and just careless turnovers. So the things that the Warriors thought they had corrected through the middle chunk of this series all popped back up at once, and it led to them being blown out, as it turned out, in that game last night.
Yeah, and here's the thing, JD. Really, if you think about who the Warriors have been this whole time, this game shouldn't have been surprising. I think we all were a little lost in the sauce after that W. But let's think back to even Game 4, where Steph and the crew and the fake timeout to Chris Webber, they almost tricked that game off. So you go into this, they pull it off in Sacramento, and all of a sudden we forget who the Warriors have been this whole season. If you didn't forget who the Warriors had been this whole season, then last night really wouldn't have been that surprising. This is what they've been doing. All year they've been mediocre. All year they haven't been able to get traction, and it reared its ugly head at the worst time. But this wasn't even mediocrity. This was just not even showing up. But in terms of we are one team one day and a different team the other, unfortunately it came at the worst time, and now the Warriors have to go into Sacramento, where we know it will be deafening in there, and pull off, it's, I guess technically not an upset because Vegas still has them as a 1-point favorite, but we'll figure all that good stuff out later in the show.
Yeah, and now the questions become, where do the Warriors go from here? I know a big question coming into Game 6 was, did Sacramento have an adjustment to make? And one of the things, Alan, that I've really had a hard time grappling with, and I did on the postgame show last night and kind of setting up the things that we're going to talk about on the show this morning, is, you know, how much of last night was the fact that the Warriors thought they had the thing in the bag versus the quick turnaround and looking a little sluggish and frankly looking a little old, and maybe that the Kings found an adjustment that we didn't know they necessarily had in going small. But even before they were able to go small, they were hitting the Warriors on the offensive glass at a real aggressive rate. And so, again, I can't figure out, was it the Warriors not being locked in, or was it just the Warriors didn't have anything in the tank and the Kings were desperate and maybe found a little something that could continue to translate toward tomorrow afternoon? Because I just keep coming back to the fact that the Warriors now are going to have to go play, in a lot of ways, the same game they just played on Wednesday in Game 5 again, and then hope that that's good enough in the final couple of minutes, as it proved to be on Wednesday night.
Well, and that's also the problem, because I don't know which option is better. I don't know if we'd rather say that they just got out-hustled or that they didn't have enough in the tank. Either way, those aren't good options. But when you look at the loose balls and the long, and there are scheme reasons as to why the Warriors weren't getting those long rebounds, but when you look at just the hustle factor, I know we talk about experience a lot. Everybody does. That's why Vegas has the Warriors as favorites. That's why everybody still believes the Warriors can pull off something that in reality should be a huge task for them to pull off. It's because of the experience. But how about this, JD? How is there nobody in that locker room knowing, just to me, it felt like they accepted that the Kings were going to be the aggressor, and that was what was alarming to me. It was as if, okay, we know the Kings are going to come out and punch us in the mouth, and we're going to have to play from behind and hopefully steal this one at home, versus, hey, guys, what if we come out and we punch them in the mouth and just say, hey, your season's over. It's as if they just accepted that the Kings were going to be, and Steve Kerr kind of talks about it as well, and the team. We knew they were going to come out hot. We knew they were going to be the aggressor. Why accept that? And that makes me believe that it wasn't that they didn't necessarily want to accept it. That makes me believe they just didn't have it, and I think that's scarier than being checked out. I think a lot of people feel like the Warriors were checked out last night, but was it checked out or just the fact that the Kings are able to go to a place that we couldn't go to, specifically when they went to that small ball lineup and they just ran the Warriors off the floor?
Well, and the aggressors won all 6 games.
Yeah.
I think that the team that's been the more physically aggressive at the beginning has wound up winning all 6 games. Mm-hmm. Now, the other teams have been ahead in some of those games, and there's been comebacks and twists and turns along the way. But I think that the most simple way to put it, as far as what you're saying, Game 1 and Game 2, the Kings were the aggressors, and they won. 3, 4, and 5, the Warriors were the aggressors, and they won all 3 of those games. And then last night, Sacramento was the aggressor again, and they evened things up at Chase on a day that really, and I thought, I don't think the Warriors didn't give the Kings the appropriate amount of respect. I think we can get into whether the Warrior fans did or not. Not that that necessarily matters, but there was a lot of talk about how this series was over and last night was going to be a coronation and all of this. I also think you look at just the semantics now as far as the schedule and the logistics surrounding the fact that the Warriors' worst 2 games in this series have been the 2 games in which they had 1 day off in between. Game 2, after Game 1, that was, up until last night, the worst game the Warriors played. Now, they still had a chance to win it with 7 minutes to go, and Draymond got ejected from that one, and everything was Sabonis, and then the Kings couldn't be stopped offensively after Draymond found himself out of that game. But that was the most sluggish, sloppy, poor shooting, impatient, can't get into your offense game before last night. And I have to wonder, and this relates to Game 7 now, is you're getting even less of a turnaround from 6 to 7 than you had from 5 to 6 or from 1 to 2. Mm-hmm. And that's something that would give me a little cause for pause, looking at whether the Warriors can muster just the energy and the intensity and the level of play one more time to just give themselves a chance in those final 5 minutes to try and win the game.
Exactly. And you talk about the final 5 minutes. I think, JD, it's also about the first 5 minutes tomorrow, because we know the Golden One is going to be off the chain in terms of how rabid that fan base is going to be to get this Game 7. If the Warriors come out flat again, you could see something similar to what the Lakers did to the Grizzlies. Now, it won't be that bad, because I got to give the Warriors more respect than that. But if you let this thing avalanche early, I don't believe at this point, with the day's rest, there is a gear that the Warriors can get to. Because after that goes out to the window, and we talked about it a little bit, JD, in the pre-show, the Kings have this very unique opportunity where they get to be at home, and because everybody is so obsessed with the Warriors experience, they get to be at home after doing what they did to the Warriors on the road in a game everybody thought that the Warriors were going to win. They get to go home and still have a chip on their shoulder and be the underdogs. That's from number one, being the underdogs from Jump Street when this playoff matchup was set, and again, being underdogs tomorrow. Now, the lines could change, but it doesn't matter, because the Kings, and they already talked about it, Malik Monk spoke about it as well, nobody expected us to be here. They can continue to have all these little bits and pieces so that the only time I see them getting tight is if this thing is close towards the end of the game. But coming out early, hey, you guys thought it was all over in 6. We were never going to win and chase. Now, could that maybe help the Warriors because the Kings think they're playing with house money? I don't know, but I also don't think that the Warriors are going to be able to, sit there and, okay, the Kings are going to be tight all game long. It's possible, but they still have the ability, because of the Warriors and the experience that they have and how much the people believe in the Warriors, to come out and somehow be the underdogs in a situation where there's no way they should be the underdogs after what they just did and what we've seen from the Warriors this series.
Yeah, and really, I mean, whoever the underdog is or the favorite or whatever, I do think as part of the story heading into tomorrow is, can the Warriors muster the champion's blood one more time? I think that's really the question to advance, and then you take the next series if you can advance at that point. And I think, but part of that is making Sacramento feel a little bit of the pressure of the fact that this is their opportunity now at home to close out the Warriors and make them feel the pressure of, hey, that's a big deal for a team that hasn't really been through it. I do think game 1, game 5 a little bit when a series is tied as it was going back to Wednesday night, and game 7, those are the moments in which the experience factor can have its most impact, its most significant impact.
Yeah.
And so I do think, on paper, until they actually go out there, that is something that the Warriors can lean on at the beginning tomorrow. Just the fact that they've been through game 7s, at least their main core has been through game 7s. They've won them, they've lost them. Again, it's the old they've seen it all kind of a thing that'll have to be in play for the Warriors tomorrow, but make the Kings feel that regardless of whether they feel like they're the underdogs or not. The thing that concerns me, and there are a lot of different things, and we can get into it, 888-957-9570. What was the issue last night? Did the Warriors just come out flat because they thought they had it won, or did Sacramento just take it to them and figure something out that they now can go to try and close out this series themselves? And how concerned are you about the quick turnaround as it pertains to the older team versus the younger team? And so much of the conversation leading into game 6, Alan, was, do the Kings have an adjustment to make against the Warriors? And I wasn't sure that they did, but they did play Terrence Davis more. They did play Davion Mitchell less. Sabonis being in foul trouble really didn't negatively impact things.
No.
He stood up early defensively at a higher level than he had at any point in the series, and threw some shots away and clogged the paint a little bit, which I think was somewhat jarring to the Warriors because they hadn't seen him or anybody on Sacramento do that in this series. He hit him on the boards, which were, 9 of his 11 rebounds were offensive rebounds. Sacramento had 18 offensive rebounds. They ended up with 14 more field goal attempts in the game. So a lot of those things that were problematic in games 1 and game 2 were there. But Sabonis being in foul trouble, at times in this series, the Kings have been better when he hasn't been on the court. And that was also the case from time to time last night, whether it was Monk playing more, Terrence Davis playing more before he ended up fouling out. They got more from Trey Lyles. Last night, Alan, I'll put it this way. Last night was the first time in this series, because I've talked about this a lot, where, and I've said it over and over and over, and it's rung true, that this series is on the Warriors. And can the Warriors patiently come up and get into their offense and make the Kings defense, which is bad, work? And when they do, they can get layups. And when they do, they can get wide open in rhythm threes that can be knocked down. And last night was the first time where this series felt, because of the way the Kings played and because of how sluggish and tired the Warriors looked, like the Warriors were not, in my mind, in control. And it happened fast, and it happened in a game that could have been the end with the Warriors moving on. But I left with the overarching thought last night of, hey, the Kings may have found something, and the Warriors may not have enough energy with the quick turnaround to fight back against it enough to where they can come back and grab Game 7.
Yeah, and if you go back, JD, to 2015, where this all started, and I'm not trying to get too nostalgic here because it's not the end yet, but when you go back to the Warriors and when they made that adjustment against the Cavs, I'm trying to remember what game it was when they, the Iguodala thing, and he started checking LeBron. And
Game 4 down 2-1.
Game 4 down 2-1.
Game 4 down 2-1, and that was it.
Exactly. So you even look at when that happened, that was game 4. So in theory, the Cavs, if they had an answer, would have had time. I think what's scary, JD, is the Kings figured this out pretty late in the series. They figured out, now you have to hit open shots, which they hadn't been doing. So how much of this is just they're hitting shots that they weren't earlier in the series? But that's what's scary for the Warriors. You don't have a game or two to now counter what the Kings are doing. You got one. And the Kings are thinking, all we have to do is not steal it, but technically steal this game seven with our new fast lineup while the Warriors are still trying to figure out, and it's over. The Warriors don't have time to recalibrate. So look, we see on Twitter, everybody is Steve Kerr is public enemy number one somehow. What is he going to do to counter this? We don't know. But what we do know is that the Kings now feel that they have a secret sauce that they can now go back to in Game 7, and do the Warriors have enough? They said, look, Malik Monk said, we're going to run them. We're going to keep running them. So I think that is what is alarming for the Warriors as well, the timing of when this adjustment happened. If this adjustment happened Game 3 for the Kings, it would have been different because the Warriors, okay, now we can counter. You don't have time. And I don't know if they have the horses either to counter this.
Well, and the Kings, I think, are making the Warriors have to look at not playing Kevon Looney quite as much after Looney had been one of the most impactful players in the entire series. And I think the Kings are almost using this as an attempt to draw Looney off the floor, and then they can see if they can start hitting the Warriors on the offensive glass again without Looney in there to basically sweep away any extra opportunities the way he really did in Game 3, 4, and especially 5, the one that the Warriors were able to win in Sacramento. So the chess match is still there, and the adjustments are still going to have to be made. He's Alan Stiles. I'm John Dickinson. 888-957-9570. What do the Warriors do? What's the adjustment from Game 6 to Game 7? Quick turnaround, early start, 12:30 tomorrow. We've got you covered. I'll be in Sacramento with Warriors Live beginning at 11:30 from Golden One Center. And then Tim and Tom on the call. Game 7 of the Western Conference first round series, with it being a do-or-die, win or go home for both of these teams. And the Warriors, it's so interesting, man, because we can kind of get into and setting the table for everybody, what moves are to be made. I think we can make the case, all right, maybe Draymond goes into the starting lineup and the Warriors go small, but they're going to have to rebound if they do that without Looney, and have, because the Kings are still going to go to and play Sabonis in the starting lineup. And so maybe that is something that the Kings are anticipating the Warriors do, and they feel like they can really make the Warriors pay more with Sabonis on the floor against that lineup. But maybe, Jordan Poole was awful last night, but I think the Warriors still have to play Jordan Poole.
They have no choice.
In the game tomorrow. And so when you start getting into, is it Dre or Looney? Is it Dre and Looney? Does Poole come off the bench? Does Looney come off the bench? All of those things are fair to get into, Alan, but as far as the 8 or 9 that are actually going to be available to play, I don't think there's really any change that Steve Kerr can go to. It's got to be Steph and Clay and Dre and Wiggins and Looney with some Poole and some DiVincenzo and some Gary Payton II and some Moses Moody. Moses Moody has absolutely earned the right to play in this series. He's played since Game 2. He's basically played well in every game of this series, and he is the one youthful, steady kind of player that is in many ways Sacramento's kryptonite. So maybe there's a little bit more of the youthful exuberance of a Moses Moody in a Game 7, but he's already been in the rotation. To me, it's those 9, and it's a heavy dose of your top 5 plus maybe Peyton. And I think if you're the Warriors, you have to let the chips fall where they may and accept that Steph, Clay, and Draymond and Wiggins are going to have to be good enough to bring you home again the way they did in Game 5.
And that's the problem with this small ball lineup. And if the Warriors do try to counter, let's be honest, JD, the Warriors small ball cannot hang with the Kings small ball lineup right now. The Warriors are going to have legitimate nightmares about Malik Monk. And I'll tell you this. First of all, before I go any further, I got to give...
Won him 2 games. He's won him 2 games, Alan.
2 games. 2 games. And I'll tell you this. I got to give credit to where credit's due for the Kings. You look at Trey Lyles, and you would have sworn, JD, that he was 5 for 5 from three-point land. He was 2 for 6, but they were so timely. Whenever they needed a bucket last night, whenever the Warriors started to get momentum, the Kings just shut it down. And now when you go back to this small ball lineup, the bottom line is the defense that the Warriors have, they're getting cooked. They are getting cooked on defense. You cannot stay in front of your man, which causes everybody to crash. And not only one, JD, does that give open shots. We talked about those corner threes. Not only does that give the Kings open threes, if they miss because everybody crashed, there's nobody around for the rebounds. That's why they continue to get second chance opportunities. So I think that's the problem. The small ball lineup. We love Andrew Wiggins. Matchups and styles make fights. Andrew Wiggins against Jason Tatum last year, great matchup. Andrew Wiggins against Luka Doncic, great matchup. These are bigger guys. These are forward guard hybrid guys. Andrew Wiggins against De'Aaron Fox is trying to do his darndest. But Andrew Wiggins, that's not a great matchup for him. And GP2, yeah, sure, he can try to check Malik Monk, but GP2 also is a one-way player. That's the other thing I wanted to say, JD. The Warriors forever, even last year, they got too many one-way players, JD. Draymond, one-way. Looney, one-way. Poole, one-way. Dante, one-way, who's been terrible this season as well. GP2, one-way. Steph and Clay, I won't say that they're one-way, but nobody is, saying that they are overachievers on the defensive end. They can get it done, though. And then when you look at the Kings, you got, look, Malik Monk, after he scores a basket, he's ready to check up. De'Aaron Fox is ready to check up. You got Davion Mitchell offensively. He's hot and cold, but he's ready to check up. This is the problem, and this is what has happened with the Warriors time and time again in terms of what they are able to do because they're limited. You have too many nooks and crannies that you got to move around, whereas the Kings, they can just roll people out.
Missed opportunity for the Warriors last night. There's no doubt about it. Missed opportunity to close out the series. They were a step slow from the jump. They got hit on the boards. The turnovers were there. They took bad shots. They were just impatient. Sacramento gets credit. They clogged the lane early in the game, and I think it threw the Warriors off. They really were trying to make Draymond and Looney drive it, and even Jordan Poole drive it into traffic, and that's been something that's been problematic for the Warriors throughout the course of this entire season.
Can we mix in a pump fake one time? What happened to the Jordan Poole, get to the lane, jump stop, pump fake, let the defender go flying, and the little mid-range fadeaway? Everybody keeps talking about, JD, how the Kings don't have any rim protection. Yeah, sure, but you can't serve it up on a platter. You don't need to be Dikembe Mutombo if you're serving it up on a platter.
888-957-9570. Great opening segment. He's Alan Stiles. I'm John Dickinson. We'll get to your phone calls. We'll get to the Comcast Business text line. What's your adjustment for Game 7? And just how you feeling? Was it more about the Warriors last night, or was it more about what the Kings did, and the Warriors are going to have a difficult time in countering with the quick turnaround? And Game 7 now just 26 hours away from Sacramento. It's Warriors this week here on a Saturday on 95.7 The Game.
I know you gotta give everything to Sacramento as far as credit, because Monk and Fox and the rest of the dudes, I mean, they look like they're really hungry, and they really took it to us yesterday. But the Warriors, to give themselves a chance, hey, how about having a clean start? You know, it's hard to just climb all the time and be uphill because you're just so careless. So they can't start a game like that tomorrow, because if they do, they're going to be roadkills. They're going to get blown out. So start the game clean. Just be on point, rebound, be aggressive. You can't win the game by just shooting from the outside. You got to be aggressive, go to the cup, try to get fouls, and number one key, hey, limit the turnovers.
Yeah, no doubt, Jonathan. And turnovers, Alan, in each of the 3 games the Warriors have lost in this series, they've had a turnover on the first possession. All 3 games they've lost. Turnover, first possession, and a careless one at that.
And if, I'll tell you what, to Jonathan's point, if they don't clean it up early on, it will be a blowout. It will be. You will not. The Kings will not. I don't care if they don't have experience or not at home, or if they, could get shook by the bright lights in the crowd. If the Warriors come out and give the ball away, it won't be pretty. It won't be. And that's the thing about last night. The Kings actually had more turnovers than the Warriors. They had 19 to the Warriors 18. But the Warriors, JD, the Warriors are the only team when they win a game, and the way that they win a game, you think, wow, how did they lose a game? We had people saying, this should have been over in 5. This should have been this. This should have been that.
Yeah,
then when they lose a game, you're wondering how they won a game to begin with. They are just a completely different team night in and night out. And we're going to see, like I said, JD, in the first 5 minutes, we're going to see what the Warriors are made out of, because the same way the Kings came out and punched them in the mouth, that's exactly what the Warriors are going to have to do to pull this off. If you get down early, I don't know. And look, I'm not trying to disrespect the championship DNA. Sometimes it's more about the facts. And sometimes it's more about you have guys. And look, I know he was still only 3 for 8, but don't let Kevin Huerter get going. Don't let him get going. And he can get hot. I'll give you one more, JD, about Malik Monk. You know who he reminds me of? He reminds me of Jordan Poole in last year's playoffs. That's who he reminds me of. Free, easy, getting whatever he wanted. And right now, the Kings have that guy off the bench, and the Warriors just don't. They don't. It's a system bucket, or it's Steph, and that's it. They have 0 bucket getters right now. 0.
No, you're right about that, and they have to run their offense. And I think the one thing we've seen in this series is the Warriors at times, and it was especially true, although I do think the Kings made some defensive adjustments in Game 6 compared to some of the other games, but it just seems like at times the Warriors don't have the patience to work hard enough to run their offense. It's almost like they just lack the discipline and focus or desire to have to work that hard to get a bucket, which, unfortunately for them, is the key to winning this series. They have to go about trying to do it in that way. And to the point on the total turnovers, the Warriors gave up 23 points off of the 19 turnovers. Part of the reason the Warriors were in the game for as long as they were was the fact that Sacramento was also turning it over, in particular in the first half. The Kings blew the Warriors out last night and shot 40%.
It's bad, JD.
Field.
And I'm gonna go a step further real quick. I don't want to hear anything about the whistle. Last night, I thought it was a good whistle for the Warriors in the first half, and they did absolutely nothing with it. Turnovers and whistles, and you still couldn't find it in your heart. You had Steph Curry saying, got to have your butts in the seats. You got people taking off work early, and you don't even show up. The fans showed up. There were conflicting reports about how many fans were in there. Look, they were in there eventually when the game started. The Warriors never showed up, JD.
Yeah, and it was maybe 75 to 80%, I think, at tip. It did fill in quicker than I expected. I thought it had the potential to be really bad. In fact, at about 4:55 or so, it looked like half full, but it went from half full to probably 80% real quick by the first 4 or 5 minutes of the game. So I don't really think that was part of it. It was just that the game was so bad that the fans really weren't into it.
Yeah,
at the level. I think the start time was weird for everybody. I'm not putting last night on the fans or the crowd or the officials or any of that. And another sign though that you got a tired team. You're missing free throws when you're a good free throw shooting team.
It was bad.
25 of 35. Steph missed 3. Poole missed 2. Wiggins was 3 for 6. Back to split the pair Wiggins, which was something that was his game for a good chunk of his early time with the Warriors, where he'd always go to the line and seemingly split the pair or hit 2 out of 3, and you end up 66, 67% as opposed to better than that. So that was, I think, another one of those warning signs in that they got to the line a lot, and the Kings are a team that does foul a lot. They're kind of like the Warriors because they're not great defensively, and because they're not, they can be baited into fouls. The Warriors got the calls but didn't make them pay, although you end up losing by 19, and hell, they could have made every single free throw and still lost by 10.
Yeah, and going back to the tired part of it, JD, I'm curious, really, in breaking down and getting into your offense, right? Getting into your offense versus just chucking up a 3, is that part of this too? Are they tired so they don't really feel like running their offense? You know what? I'm one of the best shooters in the world. Let me just get this up. And I keep going back to JD. That set, what was it? 75 to 70 when they had that fast break. Draymond kicks it out. It was arguable that Jordan Poole, he did have Jordan Poole. Jordan Poole at that point could have been a block the way Jordan Poole was going to the hole, but he kicks it out to Dante DiVincenzo, which throughout majority of the season, DiVincenzo, we'd been yelling for him to shoot more. He decides that that's when he wants to take a transition 3. Just made no sense. Made no sense.
Yeah, DiVincenzo he's had some okay games, floor games. He's had some bad floor games. He just hasn't made shots in this series, but it's a catch-22 because Poole isn't giving him enough, and you need that secondary ball handler. The Warriors have been at their best in this series when they've had a secondary ball handler out there with Steph Curry. And so it's been Poole, even though Poole hasn't scored or been efficient, it's been enough taking either Draymond or Looney off the court for one of those guards to allow the Warriors offense to flow, but neither Poole nor DiVincenzo in this series have made enough shots to where you could really make a team like Sacramento pay. And the Kings ended up 17 of 45 last night from 3. That was their best game of the series in terms of makes. They made a bunch of corner threes last night. I think I read it was a John Schumann NBA.com piece. 9 of 18 the Kings were on corner threes. The Warriors have been leaving the corner open, and the Kings have not been cashing in. The number I read, get this, the number I read on that is, and this was again via John Schumann of NBA.com, the Kings had only made 8 corner threes in the entire series to this point. They were 8 for 45 on corner threes in the first 5 games. Last night they were 9 of 18. So the Warriors were giving them ones or contesting them better, or the Kings were just not hitting them. But last night that flipped. And even though the Kings didn't shoot it well overall, 17 3-point makes is big, and those corner threes were daggers, and those corner threes were hit at a 50% clip, which is going to get you beat every single night.
And every time you watch a broadcast, what do they say? It's the easiest three on the court. So eventually they were going to hit. I think the Warriors thought, all right, maybe the lights will be too bright and we can continue to play this way. Again, that go back now to Steve Kerr and this coaching staff. What adjustments do you make? Because JD, I mean, my goodness, you cannot bring the whole kitchen sink to help on a Malik Monk or a De'Aaron Fox drive all day long. You can't continue to do it. And just pray that these guys aren't going to make open shots. I said it before. And no disrespect, because I don't know what he's up to now, but this isn't Andre Roberson on the Thunder. You can't do that. You can't do it.
No. You can't leave Herter in the corner. You can't leave Keegan Murray in the corner. And, that's basically where Keegan Murray stands on a majority of plays is right in the corner. And again, he didn't shoot it great overall, but he hit 4 timely ones. And the Kings collectively rebounded much better than the Warriors did. 53-42. Again, the Warriors were just a step slow and out of sync all night. What was that all about? Was it Sacramento taking it to them and going a little bit smaller? The Kings, again, had Murray with 12 boards. They had Monk who had 6. They got 10 boards from Trey Lyles. They collectively rebounded in a way that the Warriors have done at other points in this series, even when they had Kevon Looney cleaning the glass off at the level that he was. 888-957-9570. Let's go to Philmo Mike. What's going on, Philmo?
Hey, what's up, JD? First of all, let's give congratulations to Alan Styles one time. I'm going to put his business out there, but congratulations to you, my brother. For real.
Thank you, Philmo.
And, off top. And then, so first of all, we got to understand this. It's the same cast, but it ain't the same Warriors. You feel me? So everybody keep talking about they got the championship pedigree. We do have the championship pedigree. We got heart, but it ain't the same Warriors. And then it's weird because when the Warriors are not playing well, inexperience does not matter. Because the Warriors, when they are playing well, they go still give you 13 to 15, 16 turnovers, but they go still take the quick shots. And then if they make them, it's gravy. But if they don't, it's gonna be like, oh, the other team is experienced, whereas we playing inexperienced. You know what I'm saying? It's like a weird conundrum. And then my final 2 points is this. First of all, Shasky, all the people that was jinxing this, thinking that we gonna win and all that. You feel me? Like, you gotta play the game. You still gotta play the game. But also, you gotta realize the Sacramento Kings and the Warriors, when they play, no matter who on the team, it's always gonna be a competitive, great game. I don't care who on the team. 9 times out of 10, when Sac and Golden State play, it's gonna be a heated rivalry. It's gonna be a lot. So I should have known that this game, that you feel me, that it was gonna go 7 games based on that. And then I also should have known the Warriors, like I said earlier, they not the same Warriors. So we expecting them to turn it on. They can't really turn it on right now. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of like they've been doing this the whole season. So, like, even when they were good, they would go into games. I'd be like, "Why? How did they lose that game?" These are the Warriors, and it's just scary that we going into a game 7. It's scary.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt. And look, it's the same cast. They do have the championship pedigree. It's all still there, but you still have to play well. Like, championship pedigree alone doesn't win you a game. It's championship pedigree and you play well. It's the Warriors showed their championship pedigree in Game 5 in a big-time way. But they also had Steph and Clay and Draymond and Wiggins score 20 or more points collectively. So, is that championship pedigree? Yeah, part of it is. The poise that they played with and the purpose that they played with in that game and the way that they played down the stretch in that game when they probably should have been up more than they were, when it was a 111-110 game with, 2 minutes left, and Draymond goes to the Nowitzki shot and all that. The poise and all of that was there, but you ain't winning it on that alone.
No,
like you got to
you're
play a
not.
winning game, and the Warriors played an awful game last night.
No, yeah. If you collected all of the players in the NBA, all of the role players, even some starters that have a ring, and put them on a team, if they weren't, the superstars of that team, and say and put them up against a different team, and say they should win because they have championship pedigree, that's probably not going to happen. So you also have to play well. To me, JD, it was just so bizarre. I mean, coming out of the half, when luckily Keegan Murray missed that three, nobody even knew where he was. There was nobody next to him, and Clay, they're all pointing their fingers. What was that? And then actually on that play, Keegan missed, and I believe Sabonis got the rebound and got fouled.
Offensive rebound, got fouled, and then they gave up another wide open three. And so they ended up the Kings ended up getting an offensive rebound into another wide open three, and so the Kings ended up getting the three anyway on that play. And that was a wow. Like, you come out of halftime and that's the first possession. That was a you don't have it, because it was first the defensive miscue, and there were a lot more of the defensive miscues for the Warriors last night, but then it's the inability to get the board, which was a problem last night, and then it ends up being a kick out to another wide open three, and you're right back down 10. And there was just the uphill climb. The Warriors did not take advantage of the fact that the Kings, while their competitiveness and their forcefulness was there early, their game really wasn't. Like, they won the game and hung in the game and took control of the game basically on their hunger last night. And then as they got a little bit of a lead, they got into their flow where Fox was, and so when the Warriors were able to score, that the Kings would run it right back at them, and that's when the Kings are playing their best, is when they run it right back, even off a make, and then they get a quick make, and that's when they're at their best, and they did that to the Warriors a lot last night. Once the Warriors were getting into their offensive rhythm, like every time it felt like, all right, the Warriors are coming, the Kings would just calmly run it back the other way and get an easy bucket, which, again, that's alarming, I think, moving toward Game 7, because that's when the Kings are at their most in their bag, when they got that free flow and getting those easy twos back the other way. And De'Aaron Fox, a lot of credit to him. I think they're not using him in the ball-dominant way that they were early in the series because of the finger injury, but he really controlled the game and controlled the tempo, I thought, last night, along with Malik Monk. And the Warriors defensively were just in scramble mode. They were in scramble mode, just flying around. And when that happens, ball movement is going to lead to easy buckets and wide open threes, and that's exactly what the Kings got.
Yeah, and look, Steph Curry, best shooter to ever live, and he showed it, JD, because this thing could have been uglier quicker, because a lot of his escape valve threes kept the Warriors in the game. If he misses those, if Steph had an off night, the Warriors would have got blown out the building. They would have got absolutely blown out the building. So I think it's just something, when you go back to the tape, and not that they really have time to look at it, they know they do. So they're going to have to make some type of adjustments, but ultimately you're just going to have to check rock and find a way to stay in front of these guys, and you got to get GP2 in there. I understand that he is not your prototypical guard in terms of handling the basketball, but this is why you got GP2. All right, Andrew Wiggins, he can guard. He is two-way Wiggs. We get that, but you need GP. This is a team full of quick guards. This is right on a platter for GP2. You have to find a way to get him more playing time. And he is a guy that can counter and hit some of those corner threes. You got to have more GP2. You got to have more Moses Moody. I get it in terms of handling the basketball, initiating the offense. I'm sorry. If that's all Jordan Poole is going to do and then trick the ball off somehow, you can find another way. But I understand, JD, that you kind of live by him, die by him, because he's really your only other bucket getter besides Steph. Outside of the offense.
If you go away from Jordan Poole, and look, he played 26 minutes last night. I think in Game 5 he played 23. He only played 23 in Game 5. They played DiVincenzo about 17, 18. I'm looking at Gary Payton II played 15. Payton played only 10 last night after the Warriors called off the dogs in the final couple of minutes. But I still maintain that it's going to have to be Steph, Clay, Draymond, Wiggins, Looney, and then a little bit of Poole, DiVincenzo, and probably Moody and Peyton.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the right balance of those 8 or 9 is what comes into play, but I think it's got to be those 8 or 9. They just have to play better. And I think, Comcast Business Text Line was saying, hey, the Kings have more shooters than the Warriors do, even though the Warriors are a better defensive team. And right now the Warriors basically have 3 shooters, and that's true. And that's the Warriors have to have Steph and Clay and Wiggins basically come through efficiently if they're going to be able to win, especially on the road as they did in Game 5. All right, let's get back to the phones. We got full phone lines, 888-957-9570. Sam in Dublin next here on Warriors This Week on 95.7 The Game. Hey, Sam.
Hey, guys. How you doing? That didn't go to plan last night, did it?
No.
Yeah, so I thought the Kings, I really wasn't expecting them to make a big adjustment. I really thought they did, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And what they did is they went for really what was the heart of the Warriors in Game 5, which was Kevon.
Yep.
I thought they picked him up the second he crossed half court. I mean, how many times last night did the ball end up in his hands and Sabonis is guarding him 28 feet from the basket? So they were determined not to allow either Looney or Green to get those drives and then those easy kind of weak side back cuts that the Warriors feasted in Game 5. The Kings just took it away. They just had 3 guys in the box the entire game. And then what happened is it felt like they were like, okay, we're not going to let them get 3 passes and a dunk or a layup. Let's force them to have to pass the ball 6-7 times to get a good look. And the Warriors, as they have all season, just had no patience and did not seem intent at all on running any type of extended offense if that easy back cut wasn't there, which resulted in what we saw last night, which was, gosh, I don't even know how many contested outside jump shots the Warriors took last night, but it was incredible to watch. Offensively, the Kings also took Looney out of the game, and what they did, what I thought was really interesting, is they kind of went away from the dribble handoff with Sabonis and into just more of a true switch. They switched Looney out a ton on the perimeter, and then just let Sabonis feast inside. I think there was one play I remember, he got a rebound, he had like Gary Payton on him after his switch down on the block, and then just got the rebound, kicked it out to Keegan Murray, corner 3, and then Poole, man, I thought he would play at least a little better defensively. I mean, there was one play where he just let, Davion Mitchell just blow right by him. And it's like, Jordan, we're not asking you to guard, Jason Tatum or Damian Lillard, but you can't let these 3rd, 4th option guys just blow by you and get either and ones or force the defense to collapse and then kick it out. And then, the Kings made their shot. So adjustment-wise, they're going to have to be a little bit more patient because that little back cut game is not going to be there. The Kings, I think, have figured that out and they've taken it away. So if they want to live with the contested jump shot in Game 7, power to them, but hopefully Steve and company can figure something out.
Yeah, excellent phone call, Sam. Really great breakdown of all of it. They did take Kevon Looney out both ways, and it wasn't even necessarily to allow Sabonis to score, but it was more just to allow him to be able to work on the offensive glass against some smaller players because Looney wasn't in there to clean it off. And then at the same time, they really did get out on him and prevented him from being able to kind of survey everything defensively. And you're right, they packed the paint. They were not allowing those drives for the quick one-pass dunks, which the Warriors have had their way with throughout the course of this series. And the Warriors just were content because they are a good jump shooting team taking those jumpers, and they weren't hitting, and it was all bad from there. Quick thought, Alan. We got to get to the top of the hour.
No, I thought it was a good point Sam said about the dribble handoffs and the back cuts. We already know Mike Brown used to be with the Warriors, but we've seen this in other series as well, JD. These teams start to learn the offense a little bit, and at that point in time, it becomes Steph bail out or somebody bail us out or somebody get hot. Those little tic-tac-toe plays, the Kings were on it. And when these series go longer, these teams start to figure out what the Warriors are trying to do. So how much of that gets affected in Game 7 as well, we'll find out.
All right, 888-957-9570. A lot of people on the phones. We're coming back. We're getting right to the calls. It's Warriors This Week. John Dickinson and Alan Stiles on 95.7 The Game. 7 the game. 888-957-9570. Alan, who would your starting lineup be tomorrow? That's among the many questions on the board, and then we'll get back to the phones real quick.
Yeah, my starting lineup tomorrow would be Steph, Clay, Draymond. I think you got to ride with Looney. I really do, and pray that you can figure something out. And Andrew Wiggins. I think that's it to me. And I see on the text line 408 talking about Dante DiVincenzo. I'm sorry. I'm hot and cold with Dante DiVincenzo. I know he went to Villanova. I know he's a hard worker. I know he's a scrappy guy. I'm going to be honest with you, JD. Sometimes it looks like he's playing really hard defense, but he's still actually getting cooked. I'm going to be honest. He always looks like he's giving really good effort. I don't know how good Dante DiVincenzo actually is defensively. He's not a liability, and I would say he's average to slightly above average, but he's no shutdown defender. And offensively, I definitely would not. We saw the splits, JD. Dante DiVincenzo is the complete, the epitome of a role player. He does absolutely nothing on the road. So I would not start Dante DiVincenzo. I can't.
Yeah, They've got a tough call to make. I think the question is, Steph and Clay are out there. Wiggins is out there. I think we know Draymond's going back into the starting lineup as well. And so the 4. To me, the question is the 5th now. And the irony, because the Kings took Looney away after Looney had been such an impactful, important player for the Warriors. Do you stick with Looney as the 5th at the start and then sub him out for a guard, whether it's Poole or DiVincenzo, immediately, quickly in the first 5-6 minutes, or do you start Poole again and trust that he's just going to have to play better, make Looney the backup center, and then try to cobble it together with some semblance of DiVincenzo, and then also Moses Moody and Gary Payton II? That, I think, the key question for the Warriors among the many going into Game 7. Quick text message, 408, Steph is tired. This is how players looked in 2019 before they got injured. Kerr needs to use others, even if it's 5 or 10 minutes in the second and third quarters. Brown has done that all series, and their team looks fresher now. Well, they're a younger team, and honestly, they have had, I thought, for the most part in the series, more playable players than the Warriors.
Yeah.
Kuminga was unplayable. He was awful in Game 2. He wasn't very good in Game 1. I've been all over this, the fact that I think Steve Kerr gave him another shot in Game 2 because he didn't want to give him the, all right, one game, and I'm not going to go back to you like I'm going to not trust you for the whole series. And then he was worse in Game 2 than he was in Game 1. I think he was going to go away from him in Game 3 completely, but the Draymond suspension changed that to where he had to play a little bit. And then he was okay in Game 3, so that bought him some time in Game 4. And then he was as bad in Game 4 or worse as he was in Game 2. And that was it for the rest of the series. I think he would not be somebody that I would trust to play in Sacramento tomorrow in a Game 7. The Warriors they're going to have to ride with what they have. It's a fair point about the Kings doing it, but they've been able to do it because they have 8 that they've been able to trust all year that are pretty complementary to each other and don't usually get bogged down offensively.
That's
the way the Warriors, when they play a lot of guys, they get bogged down both ways. They aren't as good offensively or defensively. So that's a dangerous game I don't want to go to tomorrow as far as getting deeper on the bench than the players that have been playing these last handful of games. They just have to play better.
Right. And that goes back to what I said earlier in the show about the Warriors having too many one-way guys, right? You can have as many strength in numbers, but if all your guys are specialty guys, GP2 is here to try to lock down the guard, and Jordan Poole is here to ignite the offense. And if they all have specific roles and they're not hitting on those roles, or they only have one role, that's just not enough. I think what's weird, JD, is how did Kuminga go? We talked about Andrew Wiggins and how, in terms of him locking down defenders, he is better at locking down those Jason Tatum type bigger players versus first of all, his name is Swipe the Fox. He flies, right? He is very quick. Yeah, he is very
They
fast.
Hunted him.
They hunted him.
Alan, I don't mean to cut you off, but they hunted Kuminga. Fox took it to him. Monk took it to him, and then they put him in action where he had to rotate, and he gave up open threes. Like, he literally, in Game 2, gave up 10 straight points. Like, people are like, oh, -10, give him a chance to get out on the He's got to play more. How can you do that to him? He literally gave up 10 points.
But
they were all his mistakes.
But JD, how did that happen from earlier in the season where Kuminga's picking up guys full court like he's Darrell Revis? What happened?
Well, Wiggins coming back, I think, was part of it. Like he's a unique player in that you need him to be a 4 and a 5 offensively. But then you need him to be kind of a 1 defensively. And so he's almost redundant, I feel like, to Gary Payton II in a lot of ways. And now Wiggins is back, so he's getting 3 minutes. And the one thing we found in this series is Moses Moody is a better 3 than Jonathan. Kuminga was never playing the 3 for. Kuminga hasn't played the 3 for this team hardly at all this season.
Yeah.
So, but Moses Moody, it gives him a little bit more of that. Stands in the right spot, solid. Tries to rebound, which Kuminga doesn't do. Like Moody, and I've said this a lot, steady beats Sacramento, and Kuminga's just not steady. He's a high-risk, high-reward kind of a player, and those players get you smoked against Sacramento if they're not good. And we've seen that even with the Warriors' better players, right? The high-risk, high-reward. Jordan Poole, high-risk, high-reward. When he's awful, it gets you smoked, like it got the Warriors smoked last night. All right, back to the phones. 888-957-9570. Paul in Oakland on 95.7 The Game. Hey, Paul.
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my call. Great hour. I mean, this is the best hour I've heard in 2 days. Everyone else is giving funerals and blah, blah. And I think, JD, with your experience up in Sacramento, you know what's going on. And Mike Brown is a great coach. And this is the playoffs, and everybody's getting paid money, and we got to play the games. And I really appreciate you saying that. I wanted to say one thing that gave me actually a little bit of comfort, and I called in to Steiny yesterday and Guru and talked about this. Part of our championship DNA is blowing closeout games. And let me just give you this stat. You probably know it, but let me just give it to you. After last night, we are 23-12 in closeout games during the Steph Curry era. So that says we're 66% win, 34% loss. Well, 34% is not a small number. And it's kind of part of our championship DNA that we get a little collective, I don't know if it's purposeful forgetting or complacency. I mean, Steve Kerr's jumping up and down saying, guys, have some appropriate fear, things like that, appropriate sense of fear. And I think that that's just part of our team. And so in a sense, it gives me a little bit of comfort that we kind of had our clunker last night. We kind of went to the place where we've been 34% of the time. And now we've got a little bit of energy, in our rears to get fired up and maybe come out tomorrow with our hair on fire and do it again. So I'd be interested to see what you think about that.
The only part that alarms me about it is a lot of those were on the road. A lot of, and I think I had the number 10-3 before last night at home in closeout games for the Warriors going back to 2015. 2 of the 3 before last night were in the 2016 finals to Cleveland. They had the loss in Game 5 and Game 7 at Oracle. The only other time the Warriors lost a closeout game was the Clippers in 2019 when they were up 3-1 and lost Game 5, and it went back to L.A., and the Warriors ended up winning Game 6. They won all 3 games in L.A. in that series, 3-4 and 6. They had blew a big lead in Game 2. So it was a weird series. They were 1-2 at home, but then they went down with Durant and dominated down at Staples and won the series 4-2. So to me, I didn't take comfort in it because to me, I thought it actually, as far as the home, a lot of times you're up 3-0 on the road in a closeout, you lose. Or you're up, and a lot of times when the Warriors have been in that position and haven't won, it's been, last year they're up 3-1, they go back to Memphis, and Memphis beats them by 40, and they're dancing all over them, and then the Warriors come back and close it out at home in Game 6. So to me, it was a big missed opportunity, and I think it was a little different to see the Warriors play as badly as they did when they knew, when you're the team that doesn't have home court advantage, and I said this before the series, when you're the team that doesn't have home court advantage, often it's not about winning one game on the road. Most of the time you have to win 2 games on the road because you lose 1 of your 3 at home along the way. And then the question is, can you win 2? And I think over the years you'd be comfortable with the Warriors having to win 2. And we'll see what happens tomorrow. But this year in particular, I think sometimes if the team that doesn't have home court is going to win the series, your only path or your best path is you steal one somewhere along the way and you win all your home games. And so for the Warriors to give up that opportunity to close this thing out, I guess what I'm getting at is it's a lot more fragile than people think, unless you're going to go win another road game, which now the Warriors have to do tomorrow.
Right. And look, if you had been watching the Warriors, obviously you hope for the best. But if you had been watching the Warriors all season long, last night, yes, the way they lost should have surprised you, but the loss shouldn't have surprised you that much because we've been waiting for the Warriors to go on a run all season. And guess what, JD? They still haven't, right? Now they get games 3 to 5. We get all that, but we knew some type of stinker was coming. If we didn't want it to come, we tried to will it. People on this station tried to will it. The national media tried to will it. Okay, the Warriors, they're finally back, and they're not. They're not. I mean, not the way that they had been in the past. That doesn't mean that they can't win this series, but this is what they've been doing all season long. So the idea that we're just going to steal one at home, just steal one on the road, and win them all at home, just like according to plan. I'll tell you what, JD, you said congrats to me for bringing my daughter into this world last week. You know, we've been planning a lot of sleep. You know what we haven't been getting? A lot of sleep. So you can plan all you want, but the plan doesn't matter when things go wrong. And the idea that the Warriors were just going to win this game on the road, and okay, cool, we're just going to close it out at home. That's great in theory, but in reality, I would have been great for it to happen, but nobody deep down is that surprised. Maybe only in the way that they lost.
Yeah, and look, I was blown away at the way people were talking about Game 6 yesterday. And I get it. It's fan speak. It's radio shtick, maybe to a certain extent. It's false bravado, whatever it is. But I just never saw it that way. Like I never saw, hey, the Warriors are going to show up and the Sacramento Kings are going to cower a team that was 25-16 on the road. And I'll tell you another thing, and I'm not blaming the crowd at all, but the moment that Game 6 was announced that it was going to be 5 o'clock and not 7:30, you know what my first thought was? I swear to you, my first thought was, well, that's going to be kind of a regular season-y feeling crowd and not a playoff feeling crowd. Forget about how it'll fill in and all that. But at the beginning, the vibe is just going to be weird and different and more regular season-ish.
Right. And
you know what my thought was? The Kings have really thrived in regular season road environments this year. And like to me, they'll be pretty comfortable in that environment. And they also played pretty well in Game 4 to where I don't think they feared Chase Center as much as maybe they did before they played the game that they played in Game 4. And then it just wasn't a normal Chase. Forget about whether it was Oracle or whether it was We Believe in 2007 or whatever.
Yeah.
Like forget about all that. It just wasn't really a great playoff crowd last night. And again, it's not the fans' fault by any stretch. But I think it just allowed the Kings to be more comfortable, and they hit the Warriors in the mouth, and it allowed them to, in part, get the win.
Yeah, and at least from listening and watching, it did not sound, because the Kings were able to do that. The Warriors chant happened at some ridiculous time when the Warriors were still down 7. The Warriors chant is supposed to happen when the Warriors are winning towards the end of the game. They were trying. The crowd had to go into the bag early while they were losing.
That was though I think the most legit moment of the night from a fan standpoint when the Warriors chant was going, and that was where I'll be honest, like I thought, okay, maybe there's some action here, even though they were down and you're right. Typically, that's kind of a pile-on chant when you're already up 8,
right?
And you've made the 15-0 run to go from down 7 to up 8, and you're trying to put the game away. But I think the Warriors fans were trying to bring everything they possibly could to the table in that moment and hope for the best. But it didn't come to fruition because the Warriors didn't play well enough. And I just think, and I'm not coming down anybody's road specifically here, and I'm not making it personal by any stretch, but it was just silly to me. The level of, the Kings are done. They're not going to fight. They're just going to show up and quit. And the Warriors are just going to waltz right into this matchup against the Lakers on Sunday afternoon or whenever it was going to be. And it's on to the next. Like that to me was indicative of a level of disrespect that goes with not watching the Kings or understanding what they're all about this season on the road, but also as a team. Like, you know how many times the Kings have been down 10, 12 points with about 4 minutes left? Inevitably, they always go on a 13-1 run, and it ends up being a tie game with 2 minutes left, and they win some and they lose some of those games. They won a lot more than compared to some other teams, but their individual games this year have looked at times a lot like this series. And so the fact that they had an individual game last night that looked like, oh, you're down 10 with 3 minutes left, and all of a sudden with 30 seconds left, the game's tied.
Right.
Like, that didn't surprise me.
No, it didn't surprise me either. And in part, if you just look at it logistically, they don't have the Kings don't have pieces that are going to go cold. They haven't really. I know the Warriors haven't shot the 3-ball great all series, but neither have the Kings until last night. So they've always been able to hang around because of the fact that we're faster than the Warriors. And when we're not faster than the Warriors, we do have a Sabonis that can at least bang. And I know Looney's kept them under wraps for majority of it, but at least, it's kind of been handing off games. Looney gets a game, Sabonis gets a game in terms of the offensive rebounds and how that has controlled it. Even Harrison Barnes, who hasn't played great, when they need something to stop the bleeding, Harrison Barnes does exactly what Andrew Wiggins does with the smaller defender, gets in the block and gets a little jump hook. So that is why the Kings were never going to go away easily, because they're not built for that. That's what's scary about the Warriors, because when you are a little tired, when you rely on that offense and things aren't going your way, okay, let's just start chucking up threes. And if they're not falling, I don't know what happens next. JD, I do want to get into a little bit. We haven't really talked about Klay Thompson too much. And Klay Thompson, I don't know if you knew this or not, but he wore special edition Game 6 Klay Antas. He's signed to Anta. Special edition Game 6 Klay Antas last night. And I don't really have a problem with it. I mean, he didn't play great, but this whole shtick, I don't love it. They're literally playing that song whenever Klay has the ball in Chase Center, ball so hard, and that part of it, I think it was a little bit overblown. He did find a way to get hot early, but in terms of that other scoring option, Klay is really confusing because he's another guy who, and I've been fried on this text line, call line before on this, Klay doesn't create. He doesn't. He really never has, even before. He's going to get his shots within the offense and make tough shots, but in terms of a bucket getter, you can't say, Klay, go get us one. You can't. And if that's one of your guys, it's tough if he's not rolling.
No, and I thought, I said this on the post game last night, I thought Klay, the bad Klay was back.
Yeah.
And look, the good Klay was there for really the last 2 games for sure. And I think parts of Game 3 he played much more patiently, even though I don't think he shot it well in Game 3 overall. Yeah, 5 of 15, 3 of 10 from 3, but he was much more patient in that game. But to me, Klay Thompson played last night like he sat around all day and thought, I'm going to be Game 6 Klay, 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 I'm going to score 50, I'm going to score 40, I'm going to put him away, I'm going to be Game 6 Klay, and then he came out, and it was like, it was just his mindset was completely off of where it needed to be. I mean, he was one of the, and this is just reality. The Warriors need Klay Thompson to be Klay Thompson tomorrow, the good Klay, if they're going to win that game in Sacramento. But yesterday it was the bad Klay. I mean, he was one of the worst players on the floor last night.
He was.
You talked about the Keegan Murray 3 at the beginning of the second half. That was Klay Thompson. Like, that was his man that got wide open. And, he just has had – we've talked about it a lot. The good Klay games feel legendary, right? They give you that taste of what it used to be. But the bad Klay games are worse than they used to be, and the bad Klay games get you beat like almost every time now. Like if he doesn't play well, to me it's gotten to the point where, and look, this is just reality. He's an older player. He's not as consistent as he used to be, even though the numbers would tell you that he's done some things at pretty close to the same level, but he has some hot games and some bad games. And now, if he doesn't play well tomorrow, the Warriors aren't going to win tomorrow.
No.
Most likely.
No.
If he isn't efficient tomorrow, they probably don't win tomorrow.
Right. Well, and that's the other thing when you look at the points. Okay, he had
and
22.
the same for Steph, and the same for Wiggins, and the same for maybe even Poole to a certain extent.
You have to have all series really, and you could say the same thing about the Kings, but the Kings have gotten, like you said in an earlier segment, Malik Monk has won them 2 games. The Warriors, they have their recipe, and nobody else has been the surprise. You know, you take a bite of something. Oh, I didn't expect that cayenne pepper. That's been Malik Monk for the Kings, and the Warriors haven't had that. It's been Steph Curry, and let's survive with whatever Andrew Wiggins, Klay Thompson, and Jordan Poole are going to be able to give us, but nobody has really said, Steph, we need you to do your thing, but I got you this game. You just haven't had that. So really, it's impressive that the Warriors have even gotten to this point. You had... I mean, I guess I'll take that away because you did have Draymond Green. The Draymond Green game, last game, that was the only game that the Warriors have had somebody who you haven't really expected to show up offensively. That's it.
They had 4 players score 20 or more and basically do it efficiently in Game 5, and the game was a 1-point game with 2 minutes left.
Yeah,
like if that doesn't tell you what the Warriors are going to have to do tomorrow, if they're going to pull this thing off and win for a second time in Sacramento, I mean, I don't think I don't think anything else does to a certain extent. All right, we are halfway through. We're flying along. 888-957-9570. What are your adjustments for Game 7? How much of Game 6 was the Warriors not being into it versus looking a little tired and maybe looking a little old, and can they cobble it together one more time on the road in a do-or-die game? They're going to have to find the champion's blood tomorrow, as we are 25 now hours away from tip-off of Game 7 between the Warriors and the Kings, and you're going to hear all of it right here on 95.7 The Game. Steph Curry trying to keep everybody confident. Leadership moment caught by somebody on social media last night as well, as we welcome you back here on Warriors This Week. It's John Dickinson and Alan Stiles with you until 1 o'clock. There was this video that was circling around this morning, Alan, where Jordan Poole was coming to the bench. The Warriors were coming to a bench during the timeout, and looked like Draymond Green had said something to Jordan Poole, kind of a constructive criticism kind of a thing about a play, and Jordan was clearly frustrated and kind of brushed Draymond off. Mm-hmm. And then Steph Curry walked right over. You could see him yell something to Poole. Poole kind of looked, and then Curry went over and had a little moment with Jordan Poole, almost as if he was saying, "Hey, man, like lock in, act right. Don't be brushing off the vet when he's trying to make a point about maybe something that you could have done a little bit better on a prior play." So, look, this whole thing. I mean, Kevin Durant said it back in the day. Steph's the system. I think Bob Myers has said, and I might be paraphrasing here, that Steph is the culture. And so, his ability to hold things together for this Warriors team here over the next 28, 29 hours, I think is as important as anything. It may not come apart at the seams because of his ability to will it from not coming apart at the seams.
Yeah, it wasn't a great look, and Jordan Poole just has to understand, and I get it. I mean, look, I'm hot-headed too, but Jordan Poole just has to understand that it's not even about the outside, it's just this thing can go away as quick as it came, Jordan Poole. You know what I mean? And I know that he got signed, and everybody is now questioning, did you sign him too early? People walk away from bad investments all the time. So Jordan Poole, I mean, he might have a little bit too much dip on his chip, and that's partly because he did get paid, and he's going to get the bag next season. But he has to understand, you can't just walk around, and I get it, because he chirps, JD, and I've said this before. When you see other players doing things, Steve Kerr is in a very tough position, because how do you say, hey, they can do that, but you can't? When it comes to Jordan Poole taking ill-advised shots, Klay Thompson and Steph Curry do it, right? But you can't do it when Jordan Poole did the same thing last year, but a lot more of them went in and everybody lived with it. So how do you control that? And then in terms of his emotions, hey, Draymond can berate refs and yell at fans, but you got to keep it under lock, Jordan Poole. It's hard to do that too. Now, in theory, hey, they're vets and you're still trying to make your way. You can say that, but you also paid this guy like he's going to be your guy in a couple years, and he did help you win a championship. So this has been a problem that I thought would never go away. Obviously, the issues at the beginning of the season didn't help that as well, but hopefully it doesn't rear its ugly head right here at the end, JD, because I would say it would be kind of a vicious circle or poetic justice, if you will, and I know it was very mild what happened yesterday, if the Warriors end the season kind of like the way they started it a little bit, to be completely honest with you.
Well, and look, we have to see how it ends, when it ends. If it does end up ending tomorrow, I think that leads to a different set of questions than if they go on and play the Lakers and you end up seeing what happens in that series. I don't think that incident or even the incident from October is necessarily something that, I mean, it's all part of the equation. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's a doubt, but I think, look, if the Warriors don't win tomorrow, there's going to be some significant changes. Like I think that's just the reality, and today's probably not the day to get into too much depth as far as what those changes would be.
Right.
We can talk about that if and when it happens, but that how they go out, if they go out, is part of it. And I know you mentioned Memphis, and that was ugly and embarrassing and kind of sad. And I like you don't foresee the Warriors going out in that kind of fashion, but they might get beat, and they might get beat in a manner where they lose their cool, either with each other or the opponent or the officials, and all of that ends up being part of the equation as to how you factor in where you go moving forward. But again, this team, if they lose in the first round as a 6 seed, we don't know Bob Myers' status. And how does that impact Steve Kerr's status? What does Draymond Green do? Does Klay Thompson really want a max extension or not? What do you do with Jordan Poole? You have young players that didn't get the run that the Warriors thought they were going to get this year, in part because they weren't good enough. Now, if you want to blame the Warriors for not developing them in the right ways to make them better along the way, that's a fair conversation. Again, all of these things are kind of next week or in 2 weeks or in a month or whenever it happens.
Hopefully in a long time.
But all of those things are, and I do think it's appropriate to reference it as it relates to tomorrow in this sense. They lose tomorrow, all of those things that I just mentioned are immediately at the forefront, and it casts like the Warriors. They shouldn't play with this weight tomorrow, but the reality is, if they lose tomorrow, this could be the end of the big three together, of Bob Myers being a part of it, of Draymond maybe is here or isn't here, or Poole gets traded for other bench players. Like all of those things, I think are potentials. And again, you don't want to see the Warriors go carry a weight of all of that on their shoulders into Golden One Center tomorrow. But it is kind of lingering there in the background if they get beat.
Yeah. And JD, going back to Jordan Poole, and I've always felt this about him. I know he's young. He's 23. I get all that. I feel as if he takes things very literally. And I felt this for a very long time. So when you see Jordan Poole, you can almost tell what Steve Kerr has told him to maybe focus on before a game, because that's all he does. If Steve Kerr says, hey, we want you to distribute a lot, Jordan Poole won't even look at the basket. He won't even look at it. And what I'm seeing from Jordan Poole is, just like we're hearing on the broadcast, the Kings don't have rim protection. So Jordan Poole, and he's done this against other teams, okay, I got to get to the cup. And he's not realizing, hey, man, even though they don't have Dikembe Mutombo back there, you still have to finesse it a little bit. If you watch Steph, and obviously Jordan Poole is no Steph, but if you watch Steph, you just have to maneuver a little bit. They're not elite, blockers in there, but you can't just run in, head down. Everybody knows what you're about to do. How many times, and that's what I'm saying, JD, for you to be on the sideline and kind of dismiss Draymond, we understand that history there, but how many times do we need to watch you, Jordan Poole? I'm not even going to talk about the turnovers. I'm just going to talk about literally how many times do we have to watch you sprint head down, not even leave it up to a mystery as to what you're going to do with the basketball, so these guys who aren't elite shot blockers can just sit there and swat your ball to thy kingdom come. How many times do we have to watch that? I don't know if that's a Steve Kerr thing. Hey, you got to mix in this, that, the third. I don't know what it is, but you can't continue to do the same thing. And he's done it. He does it at least twice a game.
888-957-9570. Let's get back to the phones. Edward in San Carlos next here on 95.7 The Game. Hey, Edward.
Hi.
Hey, what's going on,
Hello.
Edward?
Hi, JD.
Yep.
Yeah, I think the Warriors season might be over because the Warriors, it took them 2 games to figure out the Kings play style. And then it took the Kings 2 games to figure that out. And from the mathematics that I'm doing, I'm thinking that it's too short of an amount of time for the Warriors to find out how to adjust to adjust. So the season might be over for them, and it sucks, but it might be it just might be how it has to be.
Well, look, Edward, and thanks for the call. I think the Warriors have time to make the adjustments. My concern isn't that they aren't poring over the film and don't have a counter to what the Warriors did, or to what the Kings did to them in Game 6 in desperation. I think a lot of it still, Alan, is patiently getting into your offense and still trying to make them defend. Now, the Kings did change the way they defended the Warriors, and now you have to try and counter that to be able to get into a flow and get into a rhythm. I think there's time to do it. My concern is with the quick turnaround, do the Warriors have enough in the tank, even when they make the adjustment, to play a 48-minute game against a younger team that wants to kind of hunt them and run them out of the building?
Yeah.
Not blow them out, but just run them out of the building to a point where they have the advantage in the fourth quarter, as they've had so many times this season in a lot of their games. So I think the adjustments are there, but the Warriors are going to have to go execute it and have the energy to be able to execute it.
Right. I'm sure they know what they have to do, right? It's just a matter of doing it. A lot of people, when you get on a basketball court or wherever the situation is, you know what you need to do, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to do it.
And you do have to give the Kings credit for making the Warriors play too frenetically at times. I think that's part of their secret sauce on the regular is the fact that they kind of bait teams into, we can run with them. Like we can run with them.
Right.
And I think the Warriors are in some ways the perfect team to try to do it to, because the Warriors have these star players that still, and I think I'm kind of singling out Clay a little bit, like Clay still thinks he's every bit as good as he was 5 years ago. And so Clay, he doesn't view it as taking the bait when he takes some bad shots. He thinks, hey, I'm just as good to be running with these guys, and I'm going to make these shots. And, I think the Warriors' collective mentality is Sacramento ain't running us out. It's Sacramento. Whereas, hey, this is a little different version of the Warriors, not quite as good, little more margin for error. And the Kings have been able to do this to a lot of teams over the course of this season. Now, look, they have not been a great defensive team all year. 99 points last night, 37%. I mean, again, defensive adjustments were made, but how much of that, and this is the part that I struggle with, because at times I thought last night was the first time in this series, Alan, where it felt like the Warriors were not in control. Like the Kings had found something, and the Warriors, while all series I've been like, well, if the Warriors do this, this, and this, they're going to win. Last night was the first time where I thought, well, maybe if the Kings do this, this, and this, the Warriors can't win.
Right. That's what it's looking like, JD. And I'm looking now at the Kings rotation, and obviously they add Davis last night, who even he made a three. So some of this stuff you don't know what it's going to be like. And I know people on the text line and on the YouTube chat have said all of these games have been so different. That's one thing you could take some solace in. But when you talk about being able to beat these guys off the dribble, and all the guards can beat the Warriors guards off the dribble, besides, I guess, Wiggins and GP2, but even Wiggins to a certain degree, depending on who it is. JD, besides Sabonis, you got Barnes, Murray, Fox, Herter, who started to see it go down yesterday, Trey Lyles, Mitchell, and Davis, and obviously Malik Monk. All of their guys are at least threats from three ball on the drive and kick.
Yeah.
All of them. The Warriors, let's go through the Warriors. You got, I guess, Wiggins, right? Depending on the Wiggins you get.
Wiggins might be 4 of 8. Wiggins might be 1 of 8.
Yes.
Like that's from 3. You just don't know.
Wiggins, Curry, Thompson, Poole, right? And out of these guys, really all you can count on right now is Steph and a combination of the other 3 for somebody else. And that's it. That's it, JD. And by the way, even to get to the drive and kick, who do you have? You have Jordan Poole, who today is not the day to talk about the pass and crash, but for what it is right now, the Kings, they got their number. Now, that call yesterday where who was it? It was Keegan Murray was literally guarding and then decided, I'm just going to take this charge mid-guard. That was a terrible guard. That was a terrible call by the refs. That is just unacceptable. But besides that, we can sit here and I can hop on Twitter like I do and complain. And our boss, Matt Nahigian, loves to complain about the pass and crash. We can complain about it all day long. But them's the rules right now, JD. And the Kings continue to bait the Warriors into it, and the Warriors aren't learning. And then on the defensive end, the Warriors are not countering. They're just not.
All right, let's get back to the phones. I've been bad at getting to the callers here when we've had them today, so I'm going to put my hand up right now and say, all right, we're going to get to the people.
Let's do it.
888-957-9570. George in Los Altos. Let's try to get as many in as we can here between now and the top of the hour. George, you're up first here on 95.7 The Game. Hey, George.
Hi. I'm Mr. Glass half full all the time about the Warriors, and I don't have a good feeling about tomorrow until I heard what was just said for like the last 2 minutes. Now I have confidence that they're going to win. I don't think you're giving them anywhere near enough credit that they're going to make the adjustments, that Kerr is going to make the adjustments that is necessary for them to go into Sacramento and win again. Okay, Sacramento hasn't had a closeout game in 17 years. Sacramento was hitting crucial three-pointers after we cut the lead down to 5 in the fourth quarter twice. They made big shots, okay? They made big shots. Good for them. That doesn't mean that they're going to do that again tomorrow. So I think we have a good shot. And lastly, unfortunately, and I hate to say it, because I saw Jordan as the future Steph, I don't think that's ever going to happen. And I think he's probably the only trade capital, and unfortunately maybe Kuminga, that we have on our roster. And we need to beef up our bench. We need some rim protectors, some power, 6'9", 6'10" power guys next year.
Thanks for the call. Yeah, Jordan Poole was never the future Steph. And if you got duped into thinking that, shame on you. It was his time to get paid. They paid him because he played well in the role that he had last year. And I think part of it was they didn't want him worrying about it. And then everything has gone awry from the Draymond punch and the bad year that he's had. And we'll see. And the money hasn't even kicked in officially yet. I agree with George's point about, and again, this is more the offseason question. If the Warriors are going to say, hey, we want to go in one more time with Steph, Clay, Draymond, and Wiggins, then they're going to have to probably make a decision on Poole and Kuminga as to whether you want to look to trade them to bring back other formidable rotation-type players that can help you get through a regular season and also help you get through playoff series. Like, that's just the reality. Again, you can touch on that if you want. But as far as the look, there's no doubt in my mind the Warriors can make the adjustments. It's just, can the Warriors go physically execute it, mentally execute it, but physically have enough in the tank to execute it? That's the big thing. Quick thought, and we'll get back to the phones.
Yeah, I agree with that. And look, we have plenty of time. We don't want to talk about the offseason, but unfortunately, depending on what happens, we might have to. I also, JD, and if we have time for it a little later, get into if the Warriors do win, because forget the offseason. I don't know what the Warriors are going to do with these Lakers or just moving forward. Everybody's talking about how gassed the Warriors look already. This is the first round. This is the first round, and they do look gassed. So a lot to get into, but let's get back to the phone lines.
Well, all of these series take a piece out of you, even if you win. And I think the Warriors have never had a first-round series take this much out of them during their quest to win NBA championships. And so that does, even if they win, become part of the story moving forward on the positive side of things. Austin in San Jose, 888-957-9570. Hey, Austin.
Hey, fellas. Alan, man, you're on fire, man. I mean, some of the things you're hitting on are right on as far as, kind of talking about DiVincenzo. Listen, I was off Dante. I saw him play a lot in Villanova. Love Villanova's program, but we saw way too much of him, certainly yesterday. I think he's a good role player, but if we see too much of him, and I kind of feel like Kerr's riding him a little bit too much, but maybe that's because of what he has to do. A couple other things, guys. I see fatigue. I wonder about the fatigue factor, particularly with Steph. He looks spent earlier in the game than he did before. I can see Kerr trying to manage the minutes, but unfortunately we haven't had the kind of balance off the bench that we'd like to have. And I think that Alan was hitting on that. You know, the Kings bench players right now are way better than ours. And this kind of gets down the road, JD, of, well, we don't want to go yet, but some of the mistakes we've made with the people we've bought in are starting to hurt us. I mean, we don't have the bench that the Kings improved over the offseason. I would argue that the Warriors on the back end really did not improve in the offseason. So all these things are starting to come to fruition, and we'll see. I mean, listen, the final thing I'll say is the good news, we got a Game 7. And I think that if there's one team that can put together a win, it's the Warriors in the Game 7. But we got to get that Game 7 first, guys, and we'll see where we go. Thanks.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. And to the point on Curry, yes, I see fatigue. DiVincenzo, I'm with both of you, but I don't know what the other option is. Is it maybe a little bit more Moody potentially if DiVincenzo's going to play less? I think that's not crazy. Like, Moody has been steady in this series. And so, if he's somebody you look to play a little bit more, that's fine. But I feel like if you're going to play DiVincenzo less, then maybe you're going to play Poole more. And if you're going to play Poole more, then Poole better be better than he's been to this point.
Well, and look, again, credit the Kings. It's not full on, who is it, West Virginia, Bob Huggins press, full court press, but they're at least hanging around. And I think that might be a reason that, Moses Moody, we know he's kind of a combo guard. Steve Kerr, I for everything I've said negative about Dante DiVincenzo, he can bring the ball up the court. And these Kings players, they are pressuring everything, and that might be a reason. Look, we have 3 ball handlers. We have Dante DiVincenzo, Jordan Poole, and Steph Curry. I want to get into something real quick, JD, and you can just shut me down immediately, but I got to do it because so much has been said about Anthony Lamb and how he hasn't gotten any run and how they signed him. And I get it, styles make fights. Maybe Steve Kerr didn't think he was a good match for this. Is it possible, JD? And I know he is not any better than Jordan Poole on defense, but are we sure that Ty Jerome couldn't have got some buckets here? Are we sure? Bring the ball up as that PG and at least get to his floater. Am I crazy? I know it doesn't matter, but if you got Anthony Lamb not seeing the floor, am I crazy here?
I don't think we can go back and relitigate it going into Game 7 that Jerome should have got the spot over Lamb because now they're in a Game 7 and it looks like Jerome would be a more playable player in this series than Lamb. I just don't think we can do that.
I had to throw it out there. I
don't disagree with the premise. I just don't think. I thought you were going to say we're going to see more Anthony Lamb tomorrow. That's actually where I thought you were going to go. So you did throw me for a little bit of a
and possibly who knows at this point.
He would. I think the reason Lamb hasn't played in this series is basically that they feel, I think the Warriors believe that if they played Lamb, he'd be somebody that would immediately get hunted by the Kings and would just be kind of unplayable on the defensive side. I also think it's in some ways unfair to Lamb, unless you really think he's capable of doing it, to not play him at all other than a few minutes in Game 3 because Draymond and Peyton were out. And then throw him into that environment in Game 7 and say, hey, go be one of the guys that – like you have a really high opinion of Anthony Lamb's ability to come through if you'd be willing to do that in a Game 7. So, again, we're talking about adjustments. Terrence Davis had barely played, and then he came in, and Davis had some games where he helped the Kings this year, a lot like Lamb had some games, different players, but like Lamb had some games where he helped the Warriors. So maybe you don't rule it out, but you better have some confidence that he'd be able to get it done. Nilsha in San Mateo, final caller of hour number 2. Hey, Nilsha.
Hey, what's up, fellas? And it's Nilesh from San Mateo.
What's going on, Nilesh?
Mike Brown, right now. Hey, no worries, man. So I got to say, Mike Brown is out coaching Steve Kerr, right? Like, we could all agree to that Mike Brown is doing a way better job with his rotations. He's getting guys on the court. I don't understand why we're not giving Kuminga any more minutes. I think Kuminga needs to be on that floor, bring that defensive presence, right? And especially with the Warriors right now, we're relying too much on the 3-ball. Every time you see it, they're just chucking it up. Nobody's driving to the rim. All these guys are just chucking up the ball, trying to see if it's going to go in. And they're not relying on passing the ball, finding the next man up, right? Next man open. So right now, Warriors basketball is pretty much, hey, let's try to shoot a 3 and see what happens. I honestly say that with the way the Kings are playing this series, I mean, they got a good shot at beating us. But I can tell you right now, if the Warriors come out and play Warriors basketball, I definitely think we're going to do a better job. And especially when it comes to defense, right? Like yesterday they put up, 115, 120 against us. So, I mean, I don't know what's going on with the Warriors defense, but I think they need to bring in Kuminga. I think they need to give Jordan Poole less minutes, and I think they need to make Moody take on that role and see what we can do.
I'm open-minded on Moody. Kuminga's unplayable. I think he's been one of the worst, if not the worst, Warrior players in the series per the time he's been out there. You can't throw him into a Game 7 at all. And as far as last night specifically, I mean, I've spoken my piece on Kuminga. Like, he ain't the answer in Game 7. You win tomorrow, and you get against the Lakers, and to me, you clear the deck with him, and you're going to probably need him against some of their wings. But Kuminga's not the answer. More Moody could be the answer, I do think, in this series. Only 32 3-point attempts. You know where the Warriors lost this game in terms of shooting last night? Yeah, they only made 10 threes. They were 18 of 46 in the paint. Yeah. They were 39% in the paint. 18 of 46 shots getting blocked, layups getting missed, balls getting turned over into layups going the other way. We'll continue the conversation. 888-957-9570. He's Alan Stiles. I'm John Dickinson. More phone calls. Final hour. Warriors this week as we get you set up for Game 7 on 95.7 The Game.
don't know what that kid did to piss you off, but he's never going to be a player for the Warriors in your eyes, Jay. I mean, let's be honest.
Not true. Not true, Tim. And here's the thing. It's not anything he's done. It's the way he's spoken about by the Warrior fan base and even some in the media who act like he's already a factor. He's a 9th, 10th man at best this year on a team that has first round series winning expectations and more beyond that. Like it's the belief, and it sounds like you're one of the people that believe it, and that's fine. It's your opinion, but it's the belief that he's already really good. He's not already really good. He may be really good in a year or two, and we can quibble about should he have played more and would he be farther along and all of that. The energy that I bring on Kuminga has nothing to do with him personally. It has to do with the way the fan base and some in the media speak about him as if he's like the 5th dude after Steph and Clay and Dre and Wiggins right now, when in the reality is he isn't that good. He isn't that good right now. He might be in a couple years. Like, again, it's not an indictment of his career. And the reason I made the point that I did to Goo, and thanks for the call, Tim. Alan, I'll let you jump in here. The reason I made the call that I did at the end of that show with Goo was because Goo and many others refused to acknowledge the fact that when he does play badly, that he did play badly. Kuminga can play badly, and everybody, it is silence across the bay. You could hear a pin drop when Kuminga plays badly across the bay. But he makes one play in one game for 5 minutes, and people are talking about him being Giannis or Kawhi. So it's like there's a disproportionate belief in his impact right now. And I said it after game 1, he shouldn't play the rest of the series, and I laid out for you earlier why he played in game, Kerr didn't want to just go away from him. And then he was bad in game 2, but Draymond and Peyton were out, so he played a little bit, and then he played a little better in game 3, so that got him game 4. He was terrible in game 4. The point I was making to Goo was, hey, they finally won this road game they haven't been able to win, and part of the reason they were able to win it was because Kerr tightened the rotation and didn't mess around with the 3 or 4 minutes that might get you beat. The Warriors lost that game when it was tight at the end of game 2, and Kuminga gave up 10 straight points at the beginning of the second quarter. What if he hadn't played that night? They might have won that game.
Yeah. No, and look, I think that it's hard to look at Kuminga and just see what he is versus his ceiling. I think a lot of people just get caught up with that. And that's the thing. I mean, personally, it's not even about Kuminga in totality. It's about this specific series. And Kuminga is not able to hang with these guards. If the Warriors can get by, JD has already kind of said that he could see him being used against the Lakers, right? But it just doesn't seem to be a good matchup. Now, somebody might argue that, well, we haven't seen enough to make that assessment. When something is that bad, you don't have time. You don't have time to see it again. You don't have time to see it again.
Yes,
so I
saw it.
I get it.
We saw it.
Yeah.
It like that's the thing. And as far as, Mike Brown, I mean, that's the other thing. Mike Brown gets credit but you know where Mike Brown gets credit? And this is something, again, that relates directly to what we were just talking about. Mike Brown, it's not Mike Brown knows that Kerr won't play Kuminga. It's that Mike Brown exposed Kuminga in the minutes that he was on the floor 2 different times in this series to basically prevent him from being somebody that could be a factor in this series. Mike Brown, for all the things we wonder, where does Mike Brown have the edge? How does Mike Brown get over on the Warriors and Steve Kerr? Well, one of the areas where he did was he made Kuminga worthless in this series to the Warriors. That's a hat tip to Mike Brown moment. That's actually one of them. And then people act like, oh, he'd be playing Kuminga and getting more out of him than Steve Kerr is. Miss me with all of that. And you know what? Game 7's tomorrow. And here's always been my thing. I'm going to trust Steve Kerr on that, on Kuminga. If Kerr wants to give him one more shot tomorrow because he thinks they need it, then that's fine. I wouldn't do it. I don't think he will do it. But if Steve Kerr tomorrow believes Kuminga deserves another shot, then you know what? I'll come on and be like, you know what? I was wrong, or I'll roll with what Coach Kerr. But if Kerr doesn't play him at all tomorrow, which is probably the most likely option, I'm not going to be coming down his road either if they lose, because he was that freaking bad in the time that he played in Game 2 and Game 4.
Well, JD, people are also saying they don't love what Kerr's been doing, period. So you can feel that way, but the callers and the fan base, they're going to say, well, it's not, they don't trust, they're claiming to not trust Kerr at this point. So if he doesn't play, they would say it was a mistake. They're not going to say, it's very selective when people decide that they're going to trust what a however many time champion Steve Kerr is. It changes when people decide to trust him and when they don't decide to trust him. And most of the time it's when he's doing something that they don't agree with. And most of the time it's when things don't result in a W. I don't know. That's the other thing. We talked about Steve Kerr and how he has to deal with having Jordan Poole, and then there's Draymond, and then there's Steph. Where is that line? The other part of that is this. Steve Kerr, how do you motivate four-time champions? What do you say to Klay Thompson, to Draymond Green, to Steph? What do you say to them? They know all of this, right? So I don't really know when it talks about rotation and things like that. We can talk about the ifs, ands, and buts, but these guys have already been through it. All right. So there's nothing, I guess, that Steve Kerr can say now in terms of the logistics and the lineup and things like that. Everybody's going to look for whoever, who's the most popular, JD. It's the backup QB. So Kuminga is going to be that name as long as he has to be. But ultimately, you're not going to be holding up. You're not going to get your fifth ring because of Jonathan Kuminga. That's just not going to happen right now. So we're arguing things that I don't know how much of a difference it makes. I think that it's just Sal's make fights, and these guys are a little bit smaller and a little bit quicker than Jonathan Kuminga right now. And offensively, let's talk about offensively. You cannot have another guy out there and I know his 3-point percentage has improved. You can't have another guy out there that the other team is just going to say, go ahead. We would love to have you shoot. The Warriors, unfortunately, have too many guys like that already.
They hunted him. They said, hey, you want him to guard the ball? We're gonna have Fox cook him, and then we're gonna have Monk cook him, and then you're gonna take him off. Well, we're gonna put him in action where Herter's his man, and he doesn't get off a rotation, and Herter gets a wide open three because he can't get back in rotation. This is Game 2. It was basically 4 straight plays where he gave up buckets. Literally, he gave up buckets because he got beat and or lost himself in the rotation. And so again, I get that. And there's a lot of people coming down my road on the Comcast business text line that are like, hey, look, he doesn't have the confidence because of playing and then not playing and the quick hooks and all. And you know what? That's fair. But I think to your point, you said it better than I did. Like, you don't have time to be worried about the kid's confidence in the middle of a playoff series that you may lose. Mm-hmm. This isn't 2017-18 where the Warriors are just going to win no matter kind of what they do, so you can play everybody to get them involved and let them get a little feel for what the playoffs are all about, and maybe they get better. Like that's not what this is. And I firmly believe if Kuminga had been playing 10, 15, 20 minutes in a game in this series would already be over, and the Kings would be playing the Lakers tomorrow in Sacramento.
I mean, I will roll with you there, but I don't have to, right? I don't have to, and we'll never know. We'll never know, JD. Look, people are going to dig their heels in the ground on both sides at this point.
But I also think he can be a good player. Like again, it's the old two things can be equally true. Like I'm not saying that the kid's going to have a terrible career. Right. I think he could wind up being a really dynamic, impactful player. It's just not who he is on this year's team, and that's okay. It's taken him longer to develop into being a consistent, winning, playoff, playable type player. Like, that's okay. Like, Jonathan Kuminga 3 years from now when he's, 23, 24? Mm-hmm. He might be an all-star type player at that point in time. Like, he might be. But just because he becomes that down the line doesn't mean he should be getting the run of right now along those same lines.
And here's the thing, JD. Both of the guys that the Warriors drafted, the 2 lottery picks, they're both tweeners. That's just what it is. Kuminga's a tweener and Moody's a tweener. So earlier in this season,
I got no problem with Moody playing.
No, but Moody has more of a specific role. Earlier in the season, when you didn't have GP2, you got Jonathan Kuminga pretending to be GP2 and trying to chase around these guys. That's not what Jonathan, how big is Jonathan Kuminga? He's not supposed to be chasing around no guards. That's not what he's there to do. So I think people saw that happen and thought, well, he can do that, when in reality, that's not what he's supposed to do. Jonathan Kuminga is supposed to, in a couple years, be able to do what Andrew Wiggins does on the defensive end. And that's why Andrew Wiggins hasn't necessarily shut down De'Aaron Fox, right? Andrew Wiggins hasn't necessarily looked great against these guards. And a part of that is this. These guards, this is the playoffs. These aren't regular guards. Andrew Wiggins, we saw him ball out against Jason Tatum. We saw that. But you're not dealing with just random players. De'Aaron Fox was a clutch player of the year. These guys can cook. So it's not about Jonathan Kuminga as a player in totality. It's just about it's not a great matchup. And Steve Kerr's thinking, okay. And here's the other thing, JD. I know Jordan Poole hasn't played great, but if you're going to give up things on the defensive end, you at least have to give us hope offensively. And I think 100%. That's the issue with Jonathan Kuminga. For as bad as Jordan Poole has been, he still could light that flamethrower up at some point. He might never do it. He might not do it tomorrow, but he could. Jonathan Kuminga, you're understanding that right now he can't hang with these guards, and then offensively you're trying to put him in a dunker spot. Sacramento just is going to say, go ahead and go. That's what it's coming down to, JD.
We've seen 6 games of evidence to this point, and a lot of people with the Mike Brown's out coach Steve. Yeah, at times he has. I think the Warriors also made some adjustments, game 3, game 4, and game 5 that worked, and to where Kerr's out coached Mike Brown too in this series more than people think. It's 3-3 for a reason. I mean, look at it. It's 3-3. Both teams have had a blowout. Both teams have won 2 close games. Mm-hmm. Like it is an extremely even series. I think over the 6 games that we've seen to this point, we know who the trustable players are. And that doesn't mean that they're all going to play well. And I'll leave it up to Steve Kerr to determine how many minutes is the right amount of minutes for, let's say, Poole, who's been volatile, DiVincenzo, who's been up and down in this series, as well as Moody, who is a young player that I think has been steady. Like, I think Moody's had a better series than DiVincenzo or Poole, but he's played less minutes in his role, and so his role doesn't directly mean that he would play more than Poole because it's a different position on the team. But to me, and I'll just end it this way, and we'll get to the next segment. You trust Curry, you trust Clay, you trust Wiggins, you trust Draymond, you trust Kevon Looney. You're going to have to trust Poole to a certain extent, and to me it's DiVincenzo, it's Payton, and it's Moody. Those are the 9. You can divvy it up however you want in terms of how much, but to me those are the 9 who see the floor tomorrow.
Yeah, that's where your bread is buttered. We did have a call earlier, JD, just to close it out. I understand what the caller was saying. If you want to put Jonathan Kuminga in that Davis role with Sabonis and just have him in there and draw some fouls. But I see your smirk now. I know what they're going to do. They're going to put him.
Davis can score. Well, Davis can shoot.
Well, yes, but the reason they won't be able to do that is because they'll just get him in the pick and roll situation and they'll get Kuminga out on a guard. But in theory, just to help some people on the YouTube chat and the text line and the caller from earlier, I wouldn't mind if you to appease them, throwing him in there, seeing what he can do against Sabonis. All right? Give me that one, JD. Give it to me.
I'm not giving you that one. I'm not giving you that one. 888-957-9570. Final segment. JD Allen, Warriors this week, 95-7 the game. All right, final segment. Man, this show flying along. 888-957-9570. We do have some phone calls to get to. Alan has got some adjustments that he'd like to see for the Warriors offensively tomorrow after the Kings took some things away. We'll get to that coming up here between now and 1 o'clock as well. Some text messages to get to, but I do want to get back to the phones at 888-957-9570, and we'll get it rolling this segment with Rob and San Bruno. Hey, Rob, you're on 95.7 The Game.
What's going on, fellas? Look, man, I think Kerr needs to be called out. He had all season. He had 2 years to get Wiseman right. He had 2 years to get Kuminga right. He had 2 years to get Moody right. And I like Moody. Moody, I think he finally let Moody play. But it's like you have to instill confidence in your young guys for moments like this, and they refuse to do it. So in my case, I look at Mike Brown. Mike Brown, he lets his young guys play. That guy he played yesterday barely plays, but he played in this series. He played well yesterday. You got to encourage your young guys. Kuminga has athleticism. He's long. He can be able to do something for 2 or 3 minutes, a dunk here or something. Draymond giving you 4 points. That's not enough to win the game. You know what I'm saying? They made Sabonis look like crap out there, but they didn't outplay him because they had him and Looney had a total of 8 points, so they didn't win the matchup. So you got to get points from somewhere. It's do or die tomorrow. I don't care about the system. You got to get a bucket. You got to get a point. Like, the Warriors haven't been able to stop the Kings, so why we so focused on Kuminga's defense? Like, nobody else has been able to stop the Kings all year in this or on the Warriors, so why we're so focused on what Kuminga's not doing defensively?
Well, he's not bringing it offensively either. And look, they gave him his 3 or 4 minutes. And it was bad enough. And I'll say this to the Terrence Davis. Keegan Murray plays. Well, Keegan Murray was the 4th pick in the draft and made more 3-point field goals than any rookie has ever made in NBA history. So, of course, you're going to trust Keegan Murray to work through it. Like the Warriors would die to have Keegan Murray's ability to stretch the floor. And he didn't play well the first 3 games, but he stuck through it. I do think, though, Alan, it is a fair point to look at, and it's not really a point for this series or even the playoffs. It is fair, though, to look back and say, did the Warriors handle the development of their young players well enough to where they're in this position where Kuminga is legitimately unplayable now? So that I'm open-minded to people that want to go down that road. My quick answer to that would be, anytime they did try to do it, it didn't mesh to a point where they feared they were going to lose so much that they weren't even going to be a playoff team. And so they went away from it.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to the beginning of the season, right? And everybody's saying, it's still early. And it was early until it wasn't. And they started the season so poorly, specifically on the road, that they didn't have any wiggle room to have guys fix things or work through any issues. If the argument is maybe last season because they did have such a hot start, then that's one thing. But JD, they won a championship. So you're not going to change anything that you did last season. So that's a conversation that'll go on for years. I always give Steve Kerr some grace simply because it is such a unique position. Talking about Keegan Murray and his ups and downs. What other choices Mike Brown have? Does he have a couple, Hall of Famer or who does, you know what I mean? This isn't a situation that a lot of teams find themselves in. And we've said that from Jump Street. That's why James Wiseman got traded, because these guys it was go time to try to win a championship. These other teams, they're growing together. Right? It's like joining a business that's already big and you trying to grow your career. The business doesn't have you in mind versus joining a startup where everybody can grow together. That's just what it is. So I give Steve Kerr grace. Could things have been handled differently? Maybe, but I don't think anybody was complaining at the parade last year. I know I wasn't. So it is what it is. You cannot complain when you're the reigning champs. It just makes it tough.
And I think the other thing that is fair to also look at the other way is, and I don't think Steve Kerr would ever do this in a personal way, but I've seen a few people on social media kind of throw out, hey, is Kerr maybe looking at this roster and the players who are playing and aren't playing as a statement to the front office or even ownership as to, hey, you didn't build it right. And so I am forced to go down this path. Now, I don't think he would ever intentionally not play somebody to make a point to the front office. I really don't. Now, if it impacts winning and losing, then it impacts winning and losing. That's a completely different conversation. Gene in Oakland, 888-957-9570. We'll go rapid fire here between now and 1. What's going on, Gene?
Hey, fellas. Okay, quickly. So, yeah, I'm totally with you on Kuminga. You know, he hasn't proven himself, and you can't experiment at this point. He's basically borne out what I feared when they drafted him. Same fears I had for Trey Lance and James Wiseman, by the way, that they're just too young, too raw for teams that are ready to compete for championships. Secondly, the whole business of the two coaches or one coach out coaching the other. I don't believe that's true. I agree with you there too, JD. I think they've actually matched each other. That's why it's 3-3. There's been moves and counter moves. This has been the ultimate chess match, and I expect it to continue for the final game. This has been a classic series, and I'm really enjoying it just for the pure basketball art of it. As far as the last game, I think they came out, frankly, to borrow an old expression, the Dubs brought knives to a gunfight. So, they didn't have enough appropriate fear. That was understandable. The other team did. They took advantage of us, exploited some of the mistakes we'd made or some of the defensive strategies. We were letting them shoot threes, and they weren't hitting them. This time we let them shoot threes, and they were hitting them. So I expect some adjustments. I also finally would like to see more of the young guys. I think Monk was right that, we're old, we're tired, and we're going to have to protect and, preserve those old legs for the fourth quarter. So.
Yeah, thanks, Gene. I mean, Alan, you can jump in here. I mean, I just I don't think Monk was saying anything that you can't already be wondering about if you were a Warrior fan. I mean, I had the thought last night. I mean, it looked, and again, to me, the scariest part of last night, if you're a Warrior fan, is it was the first time in the series where it felt like the Kings had found something they wanted to do, and the Warriors were just at no ability to stop it.
Yeah.
And again, day one to the next, you figure out ways to make adjustments, but what the Kings are hoping is whatever the Warriors' adjustment is can be countered, and maybe they can get Sacramento back into some of the other things that they haven't been able to do in this series that they would really like to do. And so the snowball continues, right? And the chess match goes on and on.
Yeah, and the cold sweats that the Warriors will have from Malik Monk and what he's done to them, JD. And look, I get caught up in the moment, and I'm thinking, if I said last night, if I'm Steve Kerr, I would say out loud in terms of the reffing. And I did think that the Warriors got a good whistle yesterday. But in terms of the reffing, well, Malik Monk, it's getting to the point now where the refs are anticipating a foul because he is just able to do whatever he wants and get to the cup. So if I'm Steve Kerr, I would ask, what are we supposed to do if he's just burrowing down and jumping into the air and getting the call as soon as he gets downhill and he gets the foul call? And then I thought to myself, okay, taking off my fan hat, you know what the answer would be? Don't let him get downhill. And unfortunately, the Warriors don't have anybody to keep him from getting downhill. So even when he doesn't have the three ball going, he can do whatever he wants. And at that point, you're making the refs, they have to call a foul. This might sound crazy, JD, because Malik Monk can get it going from three. You might, right now, it's pick your poison with him, and you just
give him the three and hope he's missing.
I'm just praying at this point, because you trying to get up on him is not working. You get blown by, then the help comes, and I think I'd rather Malik Monk take a three that maybe he has to think about a little. I know these are not good options, but I think I'd rather that than him getting to the cup, either forcing a foul or getting a kick out to either Herter, who's now seen the ball go in the basket a couple times from three ball land, or your boy Keegan Murray, or Trey Lyles for this matter, because nobody can miss when these guys get going. It's not a great option, JD, but you remember that LeBron clip from back in the day where he's at the free throw line and Kawhi comes into the game and you see him like, dang it. That's the Warriors right now when Malik Monk checks in. It really is right now, JD. They have no answer.
No, they have no answer. And look, he can take some bad shots. And he can take some shots that take you out of a game. He had a bad game 3. So he is a volatile player. Like, he could go for 30 tomorrow. He could go 1 of 8 tomorrow and be not much of a factor, or 4 for 15 tomorrow. And it's just a matter of what are the shots he's taking, what are the shots that he's getting. And so we'll see how everything ends up shaking out there. Adam in San Francisco next here on 95.7 The Game. Hey, Adam.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on. I'm just jumping in here. I'm just listening to the last few callers, but just the point I wanted to make why I was so disappointed as a fan last night was just the effort. I mean, from the tip off, there was no focus. There's no sense of urgency. And what was so shocking was that this group in a closeout game at home played that badly. Yeah, you can talk about coaching adjustments and who should have played more, all this stuff, but it's just the effort was not there from the start. And you can't really do anything about it when there's no effort done. I mean, every phase of the game, in sense of second chance points off of turnovers, just the hustle stats, they lost in every category. But to that regard, where in sense of to put a little blame on Kerr and the coaching, Moody has been a steadying presence. We were down 2-0 in the series, and he has that huge game 3. Yesterday, he hits that big shot. For everything that DiVincenzo's supposed to be doing, Moody could be playing more of those minutes. I want to see Moody right off the bench instead of DiVincenzo, because DiVincenzo's not hitting shots right now, at all. And it's costing us, whereas Moody gives you, length at least. He's younger. He's been proven in the series to hit that shot. You were saying earlier in the segment about you don't have to tell the core guys it's a game 7. It's they know it's a game 7. If they don't want to move on to defend their title, that's on them. They'll bring the energy, but I just want to end it with I think just Moody needs more minutes over DiVincenzo right now because he's hitting the shots and DiVincenzo's not.
I think that's fair.
Mm-hmm.
I think Moody's earned it, and I'll even go. It even went back to Game 2 in Golden One Center when Steve Kerr went to him, and he went to him in Kuminga's spot because my Kuminga rant went back to the Game 2 second quarter stretch where he gave up the 10 straight points, and then I think it was Kevon Looney who was in foul trouble, and it became all right. Who's Steve Kerr going to go to? He might have to go back to Kuminga. And he didn't. He went to Moses Moody at that point, and Moody played well in a short stretch there before everything happened with Draymond and Sabonis, and that was really the first marker of, he can maybe get another chance. And he played well in Game 3, and he's really played solidly in every opportunity that he's had to this point in the series. Now, you going to trust the young fella in a Game 7 at that level? Maybe, because I do think, again, it is a small sample size, Alan, but it's Game 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. He really hasn't had a clunker in any of them.
Yeah, I saw something as well, JD, just talking about the little bit of pressure that Sacramento's been bringing, even after they score, not full-blown college full-court press, but they are putting pressure on them. And I don't, Moses Moody, could he get his pocket picked? He doesn't really bring the ball up. I will say this, and like I said, I saw somebody else, so I'm kind of paraphrasing what they said. The Dante DiVincenzo, Jordan Poole backcourt, that's got to stop. That's got to end. That's got to end. So whether
one or the other,
you're right.
One or the other between those two. You're correct.
And maybe it's Moody in that other spot, but those two together, DiVincenzo, he hasn't had great splits home and road this whole season. You got Jordan Poole, who he's still trying to figure out what the heck he's got going on. That combo right there, I don't know what the net rating is on it, but it can't be great, JD. It cannot be great.
No, and so that again, I think you nailed it. It's DiVincenzo or Poole at different points. It can't be both of them. It shouldn't be both of them together. And then where do you fit in Gary Payton II as somebody on offense who's going to be a big man, but on defense you need his ball pressure. I know the Comcast Business text line. Texter saying, JD, you're crazy. You can't play 9. You got to play 7 tomorrow. Well, I don't think you're playing 7. It might feel like 7.
Right.
Or in Game 5, it felt like they really played 6, looking at the minutes distribution. Draymond had 31 off the bench, plus the starters with Poole in there. And Poole only played 23. But I think if you're playing 7, who's not playing? You're thinking Jordan Poole's not playing at all tomorrow? You can't do that. You're gonna not play Poole and DiVincenzo at all tomorrow. So no, it probably is gonna need to still be 9.
Yeah, and even just the combination. I know I just said in terms of DiVincenzo and Moses Moody. Look, it's easy to say you need the guys to show up, but we don't know how Moses Moody's going to shoot on the road. We know DiVincenzo hasn't shot great on the road either, but ultimately we can go back and forth on these small numbers. Andrew Wiggins, where are you at? I know you've been gone for a while. You came back hot. Yesterday wasn't great. You need something from Andrew Wiggins. Klay Thompson, where you at? Forget Game 6 Klay, and I don't even need a Game 7 Klay. I need an efficient Klay. That's what I need. A steady Klay. All right, that's all I need. We know Steph is Steph. Draymond, just be Draymond. We don't expect plus 20+ points again, but just be Draymond. But those three and Jordan Poole, I really don't know what to expect. JD, I truly don't. Just real quick, JD, I wanted to get into some of the things that the Warriors maybe could try. And I would say the same way now Sacramento is getting Looney into action, you got to get the Kings' big men into action, right? So Sabonis, which they've done a little bit, and also Trey Lyles, because if you get Trey Lyles into foul trouble along with Sabonis will probably find his way into foul trouble. But if you get both of them in foul trouble, now you're cooking with something, because there's only so small you can go, right? You can only go so small. And now all of a sudden, once you're able to do that, yeah, you might try to still expose Looney, but if you don't make those shots, you have Looney to swallow up those rebounds. So I think we know with this offense, it's either you run the offense or it's some version of screen action most of the time with Steph. I think whatever that percentage has been, it's got to be a higher percentage on those screens, get those big men into action, and get the aggressive defenders into action. Like Davion Mitchell, Terrence Davis, if he plays again, get him into foul trouble. You can do that, right? But it's got to be, you got to have that intent. And intent doesn't mean head down drives. Intent means being crafty like Malik Monk, being crafty like De'Aaron Fox. Stop just being so obvious with what you're doing. But going back to the big men, if you can get Sabonis and Trey Lyles into a little bit of trouble, now Sacramento's scrambling around a little bit.
No, I think those are really good points, and they have to just get easier offense. I think one tone, and the Warriors were exceptional, and this is the other thing they're going to have to do tomorrow. They're going to have to be shot makers tomorrow. They're going to have to make tough shots. They did that in Game 4. They did that in Game 5. They didn't do it really at all in Game 6, and they took worse shots. But the shot making from Steph and from Klay are going to have to be there. But to your point, they have to be able to get offense a little bit, just not have it be so difficult. I feel like the Kings are getting there. They aren't always making the shots, but they're getting shots much more easily than the Warriors are. Good looks. The Warriors are not getting good looks as easily, as consistently, and when they are, they're having to work a lot harder for them in terms of the patience and discipline and focus as far as running their offense to make them defend for deeper possessions and being able to get that layup line going, which has been there a lot. Not so much last night, but it was there a lot in the first 5 games of this series, even the games the Warriors didn't win 1 and 2.
And also when you get those big men into action like Sabonis and Trey Lyles, you can get past the first guy, and now you're mirroring what the Kings are doing. Now the Kings have to send help on the drive, and now you have those corner threes that are open. Now you have those open shots, and now you have guys out of position for, if case you do miss, you can get those offensive rebounds. Right now, everybody is just in place. And to your point, JD, they're just looking around. Okay, you're going to do your handoff. We've seen this for 6 games already. We know what's coming. I saw there was a tic-tac-toe play yesterday, JD, that got blocked because they said, we've seen this for 10 times. You might get a couple more points off of it, but we've seen it. So you got to get those guys in action and get Sacramento out of position and make them uncomfortable. They just haven't done that.
Mike in San Francisco, our final caller of the afternoon. Hey, Mike.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Good. What's going on, man?
Hey, I'm gonna try to make it quick and bounce around a couple different things. First off, I don't want to be a part of the jump on pool party, but you got to have to. It seems almost like this guy doesn't watch his own film. He doesn't make adjustments. I noticed the playoffs, and everybody talks about how people make adjustments and are supposed to make adjustments. But as a team collectively, they do. As him itself, he doesn't. And I just don't trust him as a point guard. Maybe a shooting guard. I guess that's where the comparison between him and Steph of coming off screens and being able to shoot it from 30+ and whatnot. But the game just seems to be more in control when DiVincenzo. I'm a fan of DiVincenzo when he's in the game. It's just more control, similar to what Moody did yesterday. He brought the ball up. He didn't rush to go to the basket. He stayed, waited for the team to get down so that they could try to run some form of an offense. And I think that I'm a Ty Jerome fan as well, and I think that would have helped if Ty Jerome would have been out there with the floater, more of a slower pace like Reeves from L.A., where he gets to the basket a little bit slower, a little bit under control. The floater may drop. Poole has a floater but doesn't use it. I have no reason why he doesn't. I mean, it's just so erratic, and I think that it's more of a, we saw what you did last year. We know how to adjust, so we know how to stop it now. And that happens in football when you have a good quarterback coming out, or in basketball when somebody shows you something. They make adjustments, and you no longer have that rookie nuance of, oh, we don't know what he's going to do. I think teams have kind of figured out his dribbling tactics. And, I mean, I haven't seen someone dribble and slip as much as he has, where he has a floater. De'Aaron Fox has been killing us with the mid-range, killing us with the floaters, all those just subtle shots that just tend to drop. And I think that if we are talking about the potential of blowing it up, we can't go with the set. Steph, you sit at the 7-minute mark. Clay, you sit at the this minute mark. We're going to have to play it and just have a blowout. And I mean blowout in terms of the blowout of the tires. We got to just run them and expect that we can get a win out of it. And, you know, we'll have to, unfortunately, may take a hit on the game next series if we make it that far. We play a little bit slower, but we have to do a little bit. We have to pull out all the stops.
Thanks, Mike. Alan, I'll let you get the last word on that. I mean, there's no doubt you can't worry about Tuesday or Thursday or the next series. You gotta get to that series. And so, to me, if it's got to be 40 plus for the main guys, then so be it.
Oh, that's without a doubt. I mean, the Lakers talked about it with Anthony Davis. I don't know what he ended up playing, but the bottom line is this, JD. If you're talking about my prediction, I gotta rock with the Warriors. I'm wearing the night shirt, but I will say this. I hope it's night in a good way, because it could be a different type of night. It's either going to be night for the Kings, or it could be night for this dynasty as we know it. And I hate to go there, but that's just the reality, JD. Either way, we know the Warriors. They're gonna go out with the bang. I don't think they're gonna get rolled over. I just don't see it. I don't see it.
I think the Warriors bring the champion's blood tomorrow. I really do. I think Kurt tightens the rotation. And even though he plays the 9 that we've talked about, and I do think the Kings in the Game 7, a little bit of nerves, which helps the Warriors, but all that's going to mean is the Warriors are still going to have to win a tight one down the stretch. I kind of like a 116 to 113, 120 to 117 kind of Warriors eke it out if they can make shots. If they're just spent physically, then it's a wrap. Right. Unfortunately, like if last night was more about where they are from a physical standpoint opposed to focus, like we're going to find out. If they're just cooked, tired, then they're not going to win the game. If it was not being locked in and they weren't tired, then I think they've got a great chance to still go in there and put the game together that they have to have. Alan, excellent stuff, man. Quick final thought, and then we'll call it an afternoon. Get back to it tomorrow.
Yeah, I think that the Warriors are going to do what we've seen them do before. The crazy part is, JD, we don't know if it's going to be enough, because when Sacramento's rolling and if they're making shots and if Herter found his stroke and these guys keep rolling and Malik Monk stays hot, the Warriors could play a good game and still lose, as you mentioned. But either way, I do think that they will go out on their sword and they'll go out respectably. Sometimes that doesn't necessarily mean a W. But I do know that they won't go out like some punks like they did in Game 6.
For Alan Stiles, I'm John Dickinson. Thanks to Craig Valentino. Fox Sports Radio is coming your way next. I'm back tomorrow at 11:30 from Golden One Center in Sacramento. It's Game 7. It'll be Warriors Live, and we'll talk to you after the ball game as well, win or lose, as the Warriors and Kings go at it one more time. And we'll have it all for you right here on 95.7 The Game. Have a great Saturday.